This is a rebroadcast of the Eau Claire School Board meeting. The audio for this program can be heard on WRFP LP 101.9 FM.
All right, let's open the Eau Claire School District School Board meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Secretary Iverson, have we complied with the Open Meetings Law notification?
Yes, we have.
Thank you. Please roll call, verify quorum.
Commissioner Spindler,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson, here. Commissioner Cummins, here. Commissioner Humbach-Boyle,
Here.
Commissioner Duax is absent, Commissioner Vu,
Yes.
Commissioner Jean.
Here.
Great, thank you. Next is the public forum. We have 4 who signed up. We have, I believe, 4-minute limit for the public forum. If you could come up when I call your name and say your name in the microphone and your address and make your comment. So first I have Tanya Santo.
Good evening, I am Tanya Santo. I'm from Lakeshore Elementary. I teach 4th grade, and I was here to give feedback about the proposed calendar for 2015-2016, specifically the instructional planning days that have been embedded into the calendar. I actually wanted to thank the calendar committee for including this in the calendar. I actually came from a district where a similar practice was happening, and it was extremely successful. Our students benefited greatly from the consistency and cohesion of our 6th grade English and Social Studies teams, and we were all teaching the same standards at the same time. So it was difficult when I first came to Lakeshore to not have this opportunity to really delve into the curriculum with my grade level teammates and really flush out the best practices for our teaching our subject matter. Last year, we started doing our 4-hour instructional planning block and this year, and I feel like I have really made huge strides towards providing my students with the best possible teaching practices. Our 4th grade team has come together, and the cohesion in both our grade level and throughout our school is incredible. The atmosphere in our school over the last year and a half has changed considerably, and I feel that the students have benefited a great deal from that change. We are able to work together, and this opportunity that you're potentially affording us next year is huge. And I just wanted to let you know that we, as teachers at our school, really appreciate the thoughtfulness put into the calendar for next year.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next up we have Marty Hardy.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Marty Hardy, and I'm a math coach at Lakeshore Elementary. And as you know, Lakeshore Elementary is a focus school, and we're in our 3rd year of this. As soon as this happened, we all got together and knew that we had to do things differently. We did a lot of reading and a lot of research analyzing indicators of the high-performing schools. And we read over and over that the way to do this was to have 4-hour planning blocks. Not an hour, not a half hour, 4-hour planning blocks. And so we implemented them last year. And this time has been used for a lot of things: collaborative scoring, collaborative planning, analyzing data, responding to data, deciding what to do with that data. How are we going to impact our students? How are we going to increase our student learning? And so we've spent that time, and as Tanya mentioned, it really has made a huge difference in our building. I feel like we've come a long way. The planning that we do is very purposeful. We were down here at the board office today doing more planning, and there were just very many different kinds of things going on, and they were all to increase student learning and to learn more about what we can do to be better teachers. So this is a great time for us to have a time for learning, and I want to thank people for being so forward thinking and understanding that we need this time in order to plan and to do the best job that we can. we live in a very changing world. It's changing all the time, and education has to change in order to keep up with it, and this is one of the best things that we can do for our students and for our community. So thank you.
Great. Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Mark Goings.
Good evening. My name is Mark Goings. I live at E17450 County Road V, Augusta, Wisconsin. For years now, we've known that focused feedback is crucial for a teacher-student relationship. It aids both in growth and positive outcomes. I'm hoping that the school board will apply the concepts of the feedback loop to the proposed school calendar. As president of ECAE, I want the school board to know that I support many facets of the proposed calendar for the 2015-16 school year. Moving from counting days to counting minutes gives us a lot of additional flexibility as a district. The calendar committee should be committed for the work. The additional staff development days at no additional cost to the district is a win-win for the students and the taxpayers of Eau Claire. The concept of a firm ending date will make it easier for teachers, students, and families to plan. While moving to a minute-based system brings opportunity, finding the best balance between all these things is an art. I believe we are close, but we're not quite there yet. I realize the school board does not wish to micromanage the development of the calendar. That is why I'm suggesting just a few broad concepts for the board to consider. First one, for the last week, staff in the community have been able to provide feedback through the Our Voice link on the district website. But who's going to look at that? Shouldn't the committee use that feedback to consider possible revisions? Secondly, additional staff development time is wonderful, but do we need to go from a system that had 2 days to one that has 9? Is there something in between? And along those same lines, does the elementary need to have the same number of staff development days as the secondary? The third point I'd like to have the board consider is having a firm ending date sounds great, but do we need to build in 5 inclement weather days when one of the members of the board last time figured that we averaged 2.1 days over the last 10 years? So I'm hoping that the school board can provide feedback to the committee and that on these three items, and will instruct the committee to go back and see if they need to make revisions to the current plan. Now, you guys have a full night tonight, which is why I have a second topic I want to talk about. As you're aware, over the last couple weeks, James Martin and myself have been conducting listening sessions on behalf of the ECAE in preparation for the compensation committee work that is about to begin. By the end of the week, we will have been to 19 buildings across the district. These meetings have been a healthy and positive experience. I'd like you to know that I've started each meeting by telling our members that I'm glad that we're going through this process with this school board and with this team of administrators. I let them know that after Act 10, there were school districts across the state that immediately made changes, but that our school board decided to build trust by letting the dust settle, letting other districts experiment with the lives of their employees. Now, while I realize that the compensation review will involve thousands of details and that we may not agree on each one of them, but I'm confident that the school board and our administration want to do what's best for our teachers and our students. I know that together we'll be looking for a system that attracts and retains the best teaching staff as a way to enhance the educational experience for generations of students yet to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Just a quick question.
Yes.
Were you doing this to represent yourself and ECA and the union? Or
For ECAE, yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay, one more. Kim Kohler, we have up.
My name's Kim Kohler. I live at 2955 West Princeton Avenue in Eau Claire. And I know you know that when I'm up here, it's usually because I work in the district. But I just wanted to offer you a mom's perspective on the calendar proposal. And three things that I really appreciate about the challenge or the changes that were made in that calendar, specific to my family. The first thing that I really appreciate is that teacher professional development days were added at the beginning of the school year and are built into the calendar so that my children won't miss their teacher while their teacher is off learning. I know that our subs work really hard. I know that they're high quality subs, but for continuity of instruction, I really prefer my kids to have the teachers that are assigned to them. So I appreciate that as a mom, and just want to thank you for considering that as an option in the calendar. The second thing is the changes to the middle school day. So I have 4 kids, and 2 of my kids have gone through elementary school really needing help with their reading. They can comprehend, and they'll test at grade level with their comprehension, but they are as slow as molasses. And so we have worked on fluency from the time they were in 1st grade all the way through 5th grade. And for whatever reason, they're slow readers. And the reality is, right now, for students like my 2 boys, they receive interventions through K through 5th grade, and then it stops in middle school. So any work that we want to do on fluency, above and beyond what everybody gets in the 6th grade reading curriculum and the 7th grade reading curriculum, comes at home, because there's not a spot in the middle school day to provide that intervention for students that need it. So I want to say thanks for considering offering students like my boys the opportunity to have intervention beyond 5th grade. And then the third thing is I'm a working mom, and so currently there are times when school is not in session or something might happen, and my elementary student could be the only one home, and that's a challenge as a working mom. So I appreciate that the middle school and elementary school calendars are paired together, because although they're not always responsible, my 13-year-old and 11-year-old could perhaps be more responsible at home than my 2nd grader. So I appreciate you also considering that as an accommodation for families. So those are the 3 things that I just wanted to share with you from a mom's perspective that I really appreciated about the calendar proposal. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kim. And that's it for the public forum. I'm just going to do a small rearrangement because our student representative has to go to a jazz concert, right? So I'm going to let Jonah do his student report now. Go ahead, Jonah.
I'll talk about the calendar, but first we'll go to something else just to break it up a little bit. As you guys all know, today is Martin Luther King Day, and at Memorial, after last meeting, I went to our administration, and I asked them if anything was going on, and they told me nothing was in the works. And last year nothing happened for Martin Luther King Day, so this year I got together with student council, and we ended up doing something. So that's a good thing that something happened. But going forward, it should never be a student-led thing. It should be something that comes down through administration and says that this is an important thing that we have to recognize, and this is something that we really need to tell our students that this is part of our history, this is part of who we are, and we need to recognize it, acknowledge it, and really learn from it. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that can be done. I don't want to speak of all those things right now, but it's something to keep in mind that it's definitely something. Number 2 is the calendar. So after last meeting, I went to our student council, and we discussed it for a while because they had a lot of questions. I actually had a lot of questions, and we had a very fruitful discussion. But then from there, we got the information out to the students, and throughout the rest of the week, I actually got a couple of petitions coming to me to sign to try to get it changed. And their ideas that they came to me weren't really ideas to change it. They were just frustration in general with the idea of having more minutes added to the day. And when I explained it to them why this was happening, and when I explained to them that that we were ending at a fixed time, they were actually, once they got all the information, they ended up being for it. So one thing that I guess I need to get better at is getting all the information out. But once they got all the information, the student body as a whole and student council definitely really enjoys the changes. And then the third thing, the only problems that arose in the discussion was the idea of having students in general having a say in the calendar year. So you guys have the Our Voice online, and I don't know if that's available for students, but something along that line in a survey form or some sort of form to make sure that the students are getting represented. The parents are getting represented, the administration, the teachers, and that's all good, but the students are the ones who are in the classroom day in and day out, and that's definitely something that should be noted. And that's it. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Jonah. It's a good point. Okay, so good luck at the jazz concert. So next, superintendent's report. Go ahead.
Well, Jonah, before you leave, I will say your voice is open to everyone. So all you do is go on the webpage and click on your voice, and you can make a comment, you can ask a question, you can give a compliment, or you can express a concern. Okay. Okay, so I'd like to review the upcoming Board of Education events. Tomorrow, January 20th, from 11 a.m. until noon in the Administration Building, the school board will participate in a system assessment interview with the Consortium for Educational Change. And this is part of the systems assessment that the school district is going through at this point. And also at January 20th at 4 p.m. in the Administration Building is the Charter Choice Committee. And that will meet at 4 p.m. January 21st through the 23rd in Milwaukee is the WASB Convention, and Commissioner Humbach-Boyle and I will be attending that meeting on Wednesday and Thursday. On January 21st at 4 p.m. in the Administration Building, the Demographic Trends Committee will meet. On January 26th, there is no school for students, but there is a professional development day for staff. On January 27th, the Education Foundation Board will meet at noon at Wickley. And on February 2nd, at 10:30 a.m., Policy and Governance will meet here in the Administration Building, and the school board meeting will be held at 7 p.m. in the Administration Building. And then on February 6th at 7 a.m. at Prairie Ridge Early Learning School, there will be a legislative breakfast. And our school district will be participating with the invited legislators and also the school board and superintendents of the Altoona School District and Chippewa Falls School District. So tonight, I get to do something that is always a lot of fun, and that is to recognize our recently National Board Certified teachers. 62 teachers from 39 school districts throughout the state achieved certification through the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, and they joined 4,158 nationwide who earned that certification credential in 2014. Statewide, 1,015 teachers are certified by the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, and they are among 110,447 board-certified teachers nationwide. The certification consists of 4 components: a writing assessment of content knowledge, a reflection on student work samples, video and analysis of teaching practice, and documented impact and accomplishments as a teaching professional. The voluntary process generally takes 2 to 3 years to complete. Of the 39 Wisconsin public school districts with newly certified teachers for 2014, Eau Claire had 3. And Wisconsin is 17th in the nation for the number of certified teachers. So I'd like to recognize Diane Johnson-Rose from Lakeshore Elementary. Is Diane here? Travis Van Vliet from DeLong Middle School. Stand up. Charlotte Winkler from Meadowview Elementary. And I'd also like to recognize Jody Miller from Putnam Heights Elementary. She completed her work to be recertified as a National Board Certified teacher. So congratulations to all of you, and thank you for your hard work and your dedication to excellent teaching standards.
Great, thank you, and thank you all, and teachers, for going through that. So next is a report from myself. First, I did want to make sure we recognize Martin Luther King holiday today, the Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I actually had looked up a quote, and I didn't bring it, of his on education in 1947. He said something in an article, said something to the effect that, yes, schools teach intelligence, but they also teach character. Character is as much as important as the intelligence part. And I found that quite interesting, considering the path of his life. So I would like to recognize Martin Luther King today. Superintendent mentioned the legislative breakfast. One thing I wanted to mention that I'm not sure you said was we're going to try and give some of them a tour of the school also, if they are willing. So hopefully we will educate them some more about our schools. I want to mention a couple of our board members are going to go to a chamber lobby day, which is, I think, in about a week or so. I'm going to go to that. The chamber, for board members, the chamber is having a 100th anniversary day, and the one reason that's important for us is they recognize some of the longest standing institutions and companies in our community, and we are one of them. So we're going to try and have a good turnout there, hopefully. I do want to remind the board that on March 18th, WASB is having a lobby day specifically on education issues down in the capital of Madison. So if you can make that, anybody, that would be great. I'm going to try and go myself. So. And finally, just a reminder, NASB, the National Organizations Convention, is in April if you want to go to that. So those are my announcements for tonight. Okay, committee reports. I don't think we actually have any. No committees, I don't believe. Do we have a budget report?
Well, we did meet, and we
okay.
had a,
okay.
I guess, a description and answered questions from our auditors. And overall, it was outstanding. I think we get a summary at the board level, but they had an opportunity for us to have a little question and answer with them, and it was, we're doing the right things. Our business office seems very sound.
Okay, great.
I'd like to add one thing. There was no findings, and it's usually a very good thing.
All right. So we're in good financial hands. All right. That's great. No, excellent. Do we have a legislative update, Commissioner Hammack-Whale?
We certainly do.
Yes, all right.
I spent Tuesday, I think it was, watching Wisconsin Eye and the hearing on the Assembly Bill 1, which changed before they even started to speak about it on the floor or the debate. Going into the debate or the conversation, there was going to be a statewide board that would oversee focus schools. And there would be a 7-year window, but if things didn't get better, then it could be taken over by a private independent charter. The conversation and what I listened to that day was quite insightful in the sense that the first 5 hours was spent with legislators and people from the DPI. Jeff Pirtle, Dr. Pirtle from the DPI, gave an amazing update to the legislators when you really think about charter takeovers and small community rural schools. I don't think people often think about that when they're thinking about charter takeovers in Milwaukee or Racine or Kenosha. So I think that was insightful, and I felt that the legislators there all really listened thoughtfully to those conversations. I don't think the people that closed down the phone lines at the Capitol the 3 days prior to the public hearing, because the bill changed. They took away the state board, and they also made some changes to the bill prior to the hearing, and a lot of it had to do with the engagement of the people in our state and the people that really care about public schools. So I thought that was really a good thing. The WASB staff was there too, and we watched people that we know now at WASB speak as well. And the head of the bill, Jeremy Teetsfeld, is a Republican from Fond du Lac, but he's a former teacher. And I thought he was very thoughtful in making sure that people were heard prior to the hearing. So I watched it for a second time, if you can imagine, late one night when I couldn't sleep. So I must be sick in the head, but I find it interesting. Yeah.
That is why she gives our legislative updates.
So anyway, more to come because the Senate has a bill of their own. But that bill, as far as the accountability bill, is much less stringent as well. So I will keep you updated on that as it goes, okay? The other thing I wanted to bring up too is that Senator Lamar Alexander is a Republican from Tennessee, is the chairman of the Senate Health, Education, Labor, Pensions Committee, and released his draft bill for Every Child Ready for College or Career Act of 2015, which will replace Nickleby, or No Child Left Behind. It's interesting because I'm going to give you a website. We've been languishing on the reauthorization of this bill since 2007. 2007, and it impacts a lot of people. So he's seeking input on the bill via email through February 2nd, and comments can be sent to fixingnclb@help.senate.gov. If you want to email me, I'll send you the email. But if you have anything that you want to say, they do listen. I saw that on Tuesday, so that was important. I think that is it for tonight. Let me check. Yep. So, end of the legislative report.
Okay, great. And if you want to hear more about it, come and observe the legislative breakfast we will be having.
Or if you have questions, give me a call.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you. So next on our agenda is the consent resolution. Under the consent resolution, all will be voted on once unless a member decides to pull it. All members have been briefed on these in one way or another already. So I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of January 5th, 2015. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session, January 5th, 2015. I would approve a motion to approve the board financial report of December 2014. I would entertain a motion to approve the gift report of December 2014.
Pull that, please.
Okay, pull. I would entertain a motion to approve the bills payable of December 2014. I would entertain a motion to approve the Human Resources Employment Report. I would entertain a motion to approve the WASB resolutions. And I would entertain a motion to approve the administrator contracts.
Pull that, please.
One pulled. Okay. So what we have to approve are all those items on the agenda except the gift report and the administrator contracts. So we have a motion from Commissioner Cummins. We have a second from Commissioner Zong. I think we need a roll call vote into the financial pieces in it. So when you are ready, Secretary Iverson, that would be great.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Cummins?
Yes.
Commissioner Hombach-Boyle?
Yes.
Commissioner Vu?
Yes.
Commissioner Zhang?
Yes.
Commissioner Spindler?
Yes. Okay, first we have the gift report by Commissioner Johnson. Go ahead, you have some comments about it?
Well, I didn't look at it until late this afternoon, and I have some questions about at least one of the rather large gifts. So I would move that we table this report until I'm able to get that information.
So we have a motion to table.
Second.
We have a second to table it. Okay. Just because you just have enough questions that you would need answered from administration about it, or? Yes. Yes, okay. Other discussion or questions about that from members? Are you okay with tabling that? Okay. Again, I think we need a roll call because it's a financial aspect for that.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Cummins?
Yes.
Commissioner Hombach-Boyle?
Yes.
Commissioner Vu?
Yes.
Commissioner Zhang?
Yes.
Commissioner Spindler?
Yes. Probably should have correct. Technically, it would probably be a postponement, but that's okay. We'll leave it as table. That's okay. We'll let it go. All right. So, administrator contracts. Commissioner Hombach-Boyle.
I just wanted to bring up that the list that is part of the agenda details, we have one person listed twice, and Tim Scootley needs to be added.
Yeah, so
Sorry, Tim.
so
You're
a typo. We should have Tim Scootley instead of Bill.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So with that change in the agenda report, any other comments?
No, that.
Okay. All right. Yes. So that was a typo. We need to make that correction. Do I have a motion to approve that? To approve this these contracts.
Second.
We have a second. So the motion is to approve the administrative and individual contracts of Superintendent Hardeback, Timothy Libam, Dan Vandewater, Tim Scootley, Catherine Schiefelbein, and Bill Giese. Any comments? Okay. Scootley, yes, thank you. So a roll call vote on that, please.
Need the second, please.
Commissioner Zhang.
Okay, thank you. All right, take a vote. Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cummins.
Yes.
Commissioner Humbach-Boyle.
Yes.
Commissioner Vu.
Abstain.
Commissioner Zhang.
Yes.
And Commissioner Spindler.
Yes. Great, thank you. All right, so individually considered resolutions. We have two tonight before our committee session. First is the compensation committee charge. We reviewed this a couple times now. Last time the board seemed to think the charge itself was fine, but we had to kind of massage the committee composition a little bit. So the process, we had heard the comments. Commissioner Humbach-Boyle and I met to try and meet those concerns in the composition of the committees. We ran it by the superintendent as well as Bob Butler. And this is what we came up with, which was in board docs. So again, we have three committees: a teacher certified staff compensation committee, and the only change was we changed to a representative from teaching and learning for one of them, and we allowed some flexibility by saying it would be preferable to have an elementary teacher from a specials area, as well as to try to include both long-standing teachers and relatively new teachers. So that was the only change there. For the other two committees, the changes were maybe a little more substantive, but to try and make it a little less unwieldy for the hourly staff. You can see we just had basically two from each area that could be represented there, as well as the others that were there. And finally, for the non-teacher, non-certified salaried staff, we kind of made that a little less unwieldy by including various departments and saying explicitly what we want. So any comments or questions about that? Commissioner Humbach-Boyle.
I just have one, and I guess it was in a conversation I had with somebody. The committees are set up as three committees, but I do think in the beginning, when they gather people together, there will be some collaboration, some interchange between committees, I'm sure, especially for input and discussion. So I just wanted to make the comment that we have these committees, but certainly there'll be conversation between them.
And I did, because that was a question I had gotten last board meeting, I did ask Bob Butler that question, if he would do that.
Yeah.
And he said he would, or if we wanted to assign someone to do that also, that would be fine. But he said he would be willing to facilitate that communication. So.
I just always think of when we put together our preschool program and our 4K program. I know in Eau Claire, they're deep thinkers, and our staff is pretty amazing. And as we got into the deep conversations, it became very collaborative, and we built something that no one had ever really done before. And I have a feeling we're going to do this with the compensation study as well. So I just wanted to make sure that people know that we'll work together to make this happen.
Okay, yes. Commissioner Vu?
How did we come to determine June of 2015 for the recommendation to be submitted?
Originally, Bob Butler, a facilitator, he said it should take 5 to 6 months, and it wouldn't be 6 would be past that, but we're hoping to be optimistic with that. So we would hope to start pretty soon. And in the end, if they come back with a report in May and say, "Boy, we got a lot of work to do," then we probably would have to extend that. But he thought 5 to 6 months to get something would be reasonable. Not necessarily all of it implemented that fall, but that we should get something. So it was based on his recommendation. Commissioner Johnson.
Just are we calling our pre-kindergarten programs early childhood education instead of preschool? I mean, maybe it would make more sense to use consistent language from our district.
Maybe you can answer that.
Well, early childhood really covers birth through age 9. So preschool or pre-K describes that part of early childhood. So I guess that's kind of what we went with that.
Any other questions? So I do need a motion to get it on the table.
So moved.
So we have a motion to approve this, this charge as well as the 3 committees. Do I have a second? We have a second from Commissioner Vu. Any other comments or questions about it? We're hoping to move pretty quickly. One question for board members to think about, feel free to email me if you're interested in being on a committee. I've had a couple express interest already. But if you are interested, please let me know, because we do plan to have 1 board member on each to attend. So please let me know. Anything else? Okay. All right. Great. This is a big step moving forward. So all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So we'll set up these committees as soon as we can. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right. Next on the agenda is the open enrollment. By state law, we have to decide about this point, which schools would be eligible for open enrollment or not. So we have some major points to report. Do we have anyone to present it all here? Or Tim, are you going to present on this, or are you going to just give a summary of it or anything, or I can read it?
Well, as stated, state statute requires the school districts to identify programs or schools that are close to the expectation of placement for open enrollment. And as we've done the last several years, there are 2 schools and 2 programs that have been identified as recommending that the school board close because of a capacity or program enrollment issues.
Okay. On our report, it says, let's see, the ones, the deaf, hard of hearing, or deaf, hard of hearing elementary program, educational programs designed to meet the needs of students who are in general ed, seating less than 40% of the time, Chippewa Valley Montessori School and McKinley Charter School.
That's correct.
Right, okay. In the past, or at least when I first got on the board, it was kind of controversial whether Montessori should be open or closed, and I know there's been some discussion about that. And we had gone back, I know there was some question whether to go back and forth which to do this year. I don't know, Todd, are you here to maybe give us an idea of why we would be closing, or what the thinking process was that for Chippewa Valley Montessori School?
Sure, glad to. Liz Harder is also here, our governance board president. This is something that the governance board really struggled with. It was an in-depth conversation that we spent hours and hours on, probably days on. And it really, it kind of came down to 2 arguments. Do we bring in open enrolled kids? Because that could be a part of charter schools as well. That could be a drive of a charter school. Or, we've had a lot of conversations about our diversity in our school, reflecting the population of the school district. And we really landed on the side of we're working on our diversity of the school, of the charter school, and we really, trying to reflect what the school district looks like. And the more we bring in open enrolled students, the less we look like the school district, because we tend to bring in the white middle class student. So I know the governance board wants to work in collaboration with the school board on what the charter school should look like, and we've had those conversations as well. And where we ended, there's no right or wrong answer to this, but this is where we ended, is closing it to open enrolled kids, and so we can bring in those in-district kids. I've also been in contact with DPI as well, just to make sure we're following all the rules and everything that's put out there. And so we're sensitive, to what the DPI is saying as well. So, are there any questions, or does that?
Commissioner Cummins.
Todd, can you clarify if an open enrolled student is either currently there or does make it in even after the enrollment period?
Yep.
Are you honoring their sibling then down the road?
We are when it comes to the open enrolled piece of it, but we pull in the district kiddos first, and we work with DPI on that, we can, the open enrolled lottery has to occur after, when open enrolled closes. So we hold the in-district lottery, in February. So then in June, when we hold the open enrolled lottery, the sibling priority does kick in, and those kiddos do move to the front of the list.
Are you concerned? I mean, as an open enrolled family, would they be?
Sure.
I mean,
yeah, sure.
That would be a concern that you
Yep.
have started attending there, and then there is not a guarantee that the other siblings would follow.
Right, and they're part of our family, so we're absolutely concerned. And this strikes at the heart with not only the staff and myself, but with the governance board as well. But it really, again, if we're letting them in, that means a district kid can't get in, and we have to face those conversations too. And according to the rules the state has put forth, we have to have, that open enrolled lottery, which includes bringing in the siblings as well. We can't have that until June, and we're trying to let families know before that, and that's why we're doing the in-district lottery in February, the same time that they have to be making decisions about, where they're going to be going for the 5K and 4K programs. So we're trying to respect the in-district families as well.
That's when we have closed enrollment. That's the situation you're talking about.
Right.
But open enrollment, they would actually be in the front of the line, the siblings.
Well,
correct.
Correct. But we can't do the open enrolled lottery until I think it's until end of May, beginning of June.
Okay. So even if we did not close them to open enrollment, that would still be an issue.
Right. Correct.
It would. Okay.
Yep. And this is a very complex process, one that we have to keep going back to DPI and the state statutes and refreshing our memories as well, because it does get very complex, and there's always a lot of emotion and passion behind these conversations as well.
Yeah, and one reason I bring this up, because I know it's important to Montessori to kind of have consistency over time. We don't want sometimes closing it, changing our philosophy each year, and I know you're kind of looking for some guidance on that. And so if board members have any thoughts on this, I think it would be helpful for both the charter committee as well as the governance board to kind of know, because I know you don't want to be going back and forth. Well, one year we're going to open it, one year close, because that changes the rules for those families who want to get in.
Yep.
Right?
Right. And again, we just really struggled with this as well. So, and we're also, really looking, we're looking to be collaborative with the school board and trying to, figure out what, I'm not sure there is a best practice, but what is it that we want this charter school to be, and what families are we going to be serving?
So I have one question to help me clarify that is, what's the difference between open and closing to those siblings? I mean, what's the advantage of not closing the school to open enrollment, right? Because you said either way in June, that's when they would be admitted. Okay, maybe Tim is the guy to answer that question.
Several years ago, when the governance board and school changed their admission process and timeline, since they're accepting resident students in February, that would have to change if open enrollment allowed open enrolled families to have the same equal access to the school. That would have to happen in June formally. The sibling can get priority if space is available, or they would take priority on a waiting list if space would become available over time. So by closing it, it reinforces the policy and the timeline that currently is in place for resident districts taking priority. By not closing it, the Montessori Governance Board and the school would need to revamp and change their admission policy because it would not comply with open enrollment statutes.
Mr. Cummins.
Do you currently still have in place the threshold for free and reduced that you try to reach a certain percentage? That was brought up a few years ago.
Right.
Is that still in place?
In the admission policy, or just?
Yes.
No. When we vetted that out through DPI, we discovered that we can't do that. so we had to take
I
it out.
thought you could not do it for racial
That is-
designation, but you could do it to have the free and reduced reflect the district.
That's what we thought too. And then the person that we talked to at DPI, because we always send in our admission policy when we make changes, and they had sent it back and said, no, you can't do that either. So I'm not sure with that if something of the state statute had changed or if there is a change in understanding at DPI, but since they said that, we took it out.
That's okay. So my concern is it two-sided, which is probably what you struggled with, is that I absolutely applaud trying to have the school reflect our community and even specifically the actual neighborhood that it's in. But the school board side of my desk tonight sees the dollar sign of, one of the reasons that it was named Chippewa Valley Montessori was to attract out-of-district students. And yes, I understand that means you're going to attract students who can get a ride in, which then you're kind of eliminating demographics possibly. But when we see the numbers going out and the numbers coming in, every year board members say, what's going on? We want more kids in. And so we want to offer as many things to pull students in as possible. And if you are telling me that a family can get somebody in 1 year with no guarantees in the future years, you're kind of closing down that avenue, which means we're closing down that revenue because those kids bring $6,400 with them. So 10 kids, it's from a board perspective, that's a concern.
Especially given where the state budget is headed. Yep, I see that.
But I understand you are struggling with it, and I don't think we as a board have weighed in on it. And I don't know whose side of the fence the decision belongs on. Clearly tonight we have to make a decision.
Right.
So it's on our side of the fence. But can you elaborate just a bit on your in-district enrollment, and that what's the opening date where you're taking names, and then what's the closing date, and then who is doing the actual picking, the actual lottery?
Sure. Yep. We start taking names at the first day of school, and they just, we collect the names, and then if we have more applicants than we have seats, then we do a lottery, and that's the first working day in February, and we have one of our governance we have a governance board person there to oversee the process, but we literally, and again, we vetted this out through DPI because we wanted to use Excel and make it nice and slick, but they actually said, no, get a hat or a container, put the names in it, and draw them out, and we tape record it or videotape it, and the order that we draw the names out are the order the seats are taken, and then once we fill all the seats, then the wait list is created, and we put those, this order we draw them out is the order of the wait list, and that wait list moves at it varies year to year, but as a kid moves out of the district, the kid goes off the wait list, that's next in line and fills that seat. The applications that we receive after that just go to the end of the wait list, and that's pretty much how it works.
So then when open enrollment is done and you get the names of the students who have indicated that even though this is closed, which is a concern of mine that they're seeing that it's closed, but we're still going to have some pocket of information of names, how do they communicate with the district if it looks closed on the DPI website?
When we contact the families, because some families will identify they only want a certain school, like Montessori, we let them know that school is closed to the expectation of placement, and we're willing to place them in another district school, pending perhaps a waiting list to see if an opening were to occur before the third Friday in September. At that point is when a family has to ultimately make a decision, do they want to accept an open enrollment placement or not. Some families will say, no, I'm not interested at all, and then we just simply remove them. Others will say yes, we put them in a holding place in another school, and then we inform them in September whether obviously there was space available or not.
And so when you get that list of names then, after open enrollment, are you saying that a sibling that's in that group would go above the in-district wait list or still below the in-district wait list?
Below the in-district wait list.
Okay, so we're essentially cutting that off.
Yep. After that, if an in-district kiddo applies, they do go, below the open enrolled kids. So we don't keep bumping in-district kids up after we do the lottery for the open enrolled kids.
It seems, I'm torn because I appreciate how much time you all put into this. It seems like something that could possibly use some more review with the board perspective included, specifically the financial piece. And by deciding tonight to close it, once again, we are pushing off that piece of it.
I think I can speak for the governance board. They would very much welcome, sitting down and have that conversation because they struggle with it as well. And we want to, have a united front, so I would encourage that conversation to happen.
Yeah. Commissioner Johnson?
Are you at capacity in the Lincoln building?
Yes, we are at capacity. I was deciding if I should say, you mean the Montessori building?
Right. Has your board had any conversations about relocating or adding a second site?
Yes, we have. We do have those conversations, and that's as far as they've gotten. Are the conversations. We would love to not have to turn anyone down because we're so passionate about what we do, and we think we can educate a child very well, that we would love to take all kids in. But that building doesn't have the capacity for us to do that.
Oh, Commissioner Cummins.
Do you have any current families who are concerned about siblings not getting a spot next year?
Yes.
Because they are open enrolled?
Correct.
The hard piece of this is that, so we authorize you, you report to this board, but we have administrators who sort of do our work, that we're not meeting with you. So we rarely get to communicate, and so I don't think I can support closing Montessori. Not that I wouldn't pass without that, but is there a dialogue that can happen so that those, specifically those families that are currently at your school, to think that their siblings aren't going to get in? I didn't know about that until the last couple of weeks. I heard it, and I said, no, that's not true. It's always siblings first. That's state statute. Siblings always have. I didn't know that you were carving out. And so is it possible that by not closing the school that you could follow a different enrollment procedure for this year where you put everybody, once they're open enrolled, into one lottery? I understand that you want to place people early.
Yep.
But
there is. One of the options to charter schools is to set a certain percentage of seats aside for open enrolled kids. And so after this, how we looked at it, again, there's always two sides to this, right or wrong, no right answer, no wrong answer. That after this year when siblings get in, or let's say a couple years, all of a sudden there's those seats, and we're not letting the district kids have those because we're setting to the side and filling them with open enrolled kids. Now, maybe we won't get any open enrolled kids apply, then we'd fill it with in-district kids. So that's how we viewed that option, and we decided not to go with it. But I can tell you, it's not like it's a unanimous decision with the governance board either. I mean, we struggled with this because these are our neighbors and friends and people in the school. So, yeah, that's where we landed.
And the reality is that from a from a financial perspective, the student, the in-district student who doesn't make it in will go to one of our other elementary schools, more than likely. And the student that's coming from out of district will come here and bring dollars with them, so.
So your current procedure that you have, that you set up now, is really more geared toward closing enrollment, it sounds
Correct.
like, right?
Right, yep, that's what we're...
That's how I heard that. Okay, all right. And so you'd need a revamping of that if we did open enrollment, essentially. I mean, at least to improve the situation for siblings and so forth.
Correct.
Correct, okay. Commissioner Zhang.
I want to thank you for the attempt or for trying to diversify your population there, as far as closing it out to some families that will be coming in because they have the means to get their kids there, and opening it up to the kids that are within the blocks of the school. I think this is a great thing, and this is something that I've been for, as far as trying to diversify your student population. And if this is what you think will make that happen, I'm going to vote for it.
Okay. Commissioner Cummins.
I just want to clarify, this policy is not opening up to the neighborhood. They don't have that policy in place. This is just opening up to the district. It isn't addressing what we've talked about addressing, but you are doing that in other ways, I know, but because originally we wanted that. When you convert a school, you actually can give those students preferential option and grandfather them in. The board at that time, the school board, or the governance board at that time, made the decision not to do that, and we've never really recovered from that decision. So if that could happen, I would be more inclined.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
I actually asked DPI about that, if we could go back and do that, and they said no.
Now, then, my next question is, have we ever been, any time that you can remember, under capacity at your school?
Yes.
Okay.
When I first took over, or not took over, but when I first started there, we were under capacity, and we, the program was growing at that time. So, and it's just recently we put a number on that capacity. So it's the first time we were able to measure if we're at capacity or not. So the capacity is 300 kids, and we're currently at 280 or 290.
Okay, so if we close off, if we go with this proposal, will we be under? Will we not have enough students?
No, we will have enough students.
Okay.
Either way, we'll have enough students.
Okay.
We'll have to put this on the floor for a vote soon here. For me, my inclination is to go with what because I can see both ways. I can go either way. I do want siblings to be able to get in, but for me at this point, I'm willing to accept what its governance board has said seems best based on what they've said. But if they had said the other way, I probably would have said that sounds good to me, as long as we're meeting our diversity goals. To me, that's the important point. Are we meeting our diversity and academic goals? And you can do it however you want. But since that's what the board has sounded like, the governance board has said it wants right now, I would be fine with that at this point. I don't know where all the other members stand, but that's kind of how I'm feeling it. But I think just in the long run, I think we at least need the charter committee or someone to discuss this in more detail, then come back to the board and say, this is the specific feedback we need from the board. Make a decision for us so we can go. And I'm hoping we can do that. And I think maybe the charter committee is a good place for that. We got 2 board members on that. Maybe we can figure that out in a little more detail. I'm a little struggling here because I don't want the few siblings now that want to get in. But I just like to go with the governance board, in my opinion, right now, what they've said. Go ahead, Commissioner Cummins.
If we were to vote to close the school, Does anything stop you and your governance board from going back and changing that policy so siblings means siblings? Can you allow, I'm looking at Liz too here, can you allow the families that are currently there, can we at least say that once an open enrolled family gets in, that they get the benefit from the state statute on the sibling? I mean,
No, we tried to do that with the DPI.
so if you close, you close?
Right, and if they're open enrolled, they're open enrolled, and they have to be, you know, during the open enrolled lottery.
Really?
Yep, because a sibling has priority, but they have that priority over the other open enrolled kids, not the in-district kids.
But in districts that don't do it the way you're talking about, once you're open enrolled, you are the same as every district kid. So when the lottery happens, there's no difference. So the siblings get the spot.
We have found that there's inconsistencies across the state, and so we rely on what DPI tells us, and we're not sure why those inconsistencies exist. So we just go by what DPI tells us.
So if this passes tonight, can we at least agree, like President Spindler said, to look at it in the future, but also to make it very clear to those families that this is on you and your board? Because we were contacted in the past when this happened as the Big Bad School Board, and this is really your internal decision on how you want to handle your lottery and your open enrolled students, because I think we haven't said go one way or the other. So that's the only, I want to be clear that that's your operating decision.
Yes.
Okay, could I have a motion on this?
So moved.
So is the is the motion to close the four on this list, which I assume is the recommendation, the deaf, hard of hearing, educational programs on number 2, Chippewa Valley Montessori School and McKinley Charter. So we have a motion from Commissioner Zhang to close those to open enrollment, I assume. Correct?
Yes.
Do we have a second on that?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Johnson. Do we have other comments, questions about this? I know this is a difficult one. I know it's difficult for Montessori also. Okay. Let's do a roll call vote just to be sure on this one. Could we do that, Secretary Iverson?
We can. I'm just having a little problem with my computer right now, so.
We can do a voice vote if we need to.
That might be easier at this
Okay,
point.
let's do a voice vote, and if someone calls for a recount, we can do that. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Oh, okay. Not so hard to count. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Great discussion, and I hope we can help the Montessori board in the future, and the charter committee could take that. I think that's the perfect place to maybe hash this out a little bit, and I feel torn myself. So, all right. So now we go into committee session, and the first report for us is the budget report, budget considerations.
Okay, two things to talk to you about tonight. One would be just a very preliminary look at the 2015-16 budget, what it might look like as we stand here today. And then I'd like to just take a minute or two and share with you the proposed budget calendar for 15-16. So we all have an idea of what's coming down the line. So first, 15-16 budget planning. A lot of this is going to look very familiar. Especially now that we're at the front end of a state biennial budget. 15-16 is the first year of the two-year state biennial budget. And whenever you have that situation, you have a little bit more uncertainty in terms of budgeting than you would have if you were in the second year of the biennial budget. So what we do know about the state is that 93% of the money that we are allowed to raise comes under the control of the legislature and the governor. So yeah, the state will control this next biennial budget 93% of our revenue stream. That's not going to change. So that is significant. What else do we know? Well, we know that they're talking about a $2.2 billion deficit for the next biennial budget. Now, you got to understand that this is kind of soft projection. What it is, it's the difference between what the departments at the state level are asking for and the amount of revenue that they project to receive over 2 years, $2.2 billion. Included in that is about a $700 million request for funding of K-12 education. So the next period of time at the state level, what's going to happen is they're going to be scaling back program requests, and it's reasonable to expect that that $700 million is not immune to change as we move forward.
Dan, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So the 2.2 billion and the 700 million, does the picture look different since they passed the fact that the transportation money cannot be touched?
I haven't seen that folded into the discussion.
Okay.
Right. What do we know about the governor's budget? Well, we know that he's now said that on February 3rd he will release his budget proposal. So right now that's being held very close to the vest, and we don't know a lot about it. But we do know from comments that he's made as recently as the State of the State address that property tax reduction is a high priority for the governor and for perhaps some in the legislature. Voucher program expansion is still out there, and I think that there is a desire to see that happen. Revenue limit increase, you'll notice the question mark at the end of that. Not too sure there's going to be a lot of interest in increasing the revenue limit, which controls 85% of what the district is allowed to raise. And here's why. We know that the revenue limit controls two things, two big pieces of revenue for us, state aid and property tax. So if there is going to be an increase in the revenue limit, one of two things is going to happen. Either state aid is going to increase to fill that gap, or property tax is going to have to increase to fill that gap if state aid does not increase. Well, okay, 2.2 billion. How likely is it that there's going to be a significant increase in state aid? Probably not very likely. Well, what about the property tax increase? Well, we know that there is a very strong desire to not increase property taxes, but to continue to decrease them. So the likelihood of either of those things happening is probably less than no change in the amount of the revenue limit, which is driven by the per pupil increase, which takes us to this slide. If we go back to 2002, 2003, when we really thought we had budget problems, that per pupil increase was based on the Consumer Price Index change from year to year, and it was $230.08 per student. Well, that grew year after year until 2008, 2009, when it reached the high point of $274.68. Then what happened is the Doyle administration came in, had some budget problems going, so they changed the formula, and it wound up being a fixed $200 for the 9-10 and 10-11 biennium. Then Act 10 came in, and we saw the 5.5% decrease in 11-12. the first year of that biennial budget, followed by a $50 per pupil increase. And then this last biennial budget, starting in 13-14, well, it wound up being $75, but it started out at a zero increase. There were some more favorable revenue projections that surfaced, which allowed it to go to 75. So 15-16, 16-17, what's going to happen, we don't know. But that will be known in the not too distant future. To show you a little bit about the impact of this, if we look at where it was at the high point, 274.68, and where it currently is at $75, that's a difference of almost $200 per student. Well, if you multiply that times the number of students that we have in our revenue limit formula, you're talking about $2.2 million worth of additional revenue that this district would be allowed to raise had we been back on the CPI increase. So it is a significant amount of money, and it's a significant amount of money every year. So that's just something to keep in mind. That's pretty much what we know about the state and what's happening there. We'll know more after February 3rd, but for right now, that's what you see is what we know. At the local level, there are two things always that are factors. One is enrollment, the other is expenditure growth. What's happening with enrollment? Well, if you go back to 2005, 2006, and this enrollment, by the way, is enrollment that has been processed for revenue limit purposes, okay? We started out seeing a decline for several years. It tapered off. We started into an increase trend, and that has been the case, varying numbers for 4 years. 13-14 was a year where it did take a dip, but this year it rebounded to an increase of 115 students. Where it goes from here, we're not sure, but we have asked the Applied Population Lab in Madison that has worked with the district on on its enrollment projections to update the information, and we should be getting that sometime in March. And hopefully then we'll have a better handle on what enrollment growth will be. Expenditure growth, in order to get some options before you, I've had to put in some parameters into enrollment growth, expenditure growth. And so here are the three parameters that are constant in the four options that I'll share with you in a moment. 1.5% increase in contract salaries, and what that implies is that the base wage increase that we have seen the last couple of years will be roughly the same. It also implies that we will not see large increases in staff, which is pretty much what we have experienced in the last year or so. It includes adjustments to benefit rates. We know that we know what our health insurance is going to be for 4 years out because of the agreement last year and the move to the employee clinic. And then a zero increase in all of the other non-salary and benefit areas, which will be a challenge, but it's built into this assumption. So, option one. What happens if there is a zero per pupil increase in the revenue limit? There is a zero increase in enrollment. We build in those parameters that I just talked about. We have a situation where expenditures are projected to exceed revenue by about $3.6 million. All right? Expenditures higher than revenue, $3.6 million. Well, what happens if that per pupil increase stays at zero, and we are fortunate enough to have 100 FTE enrollment increase and the same parameters that I just talked about? Well, you can see there that expenditures exceed revenue a little over $3.4 million. not a lot of difference between the one that we just looked at in option 1, which says to us that an enrollment increase does not really have a big impact on that deficit in our district. Well, what about option 3? Let's switch that around a little bit and say that, let's say that the state does give us the same per pupil increase in the revenue limit as we enjoy now, but there's no enrollment increase. Okay, there we have expenditures exceeding revenue by, well, it's down to 2.7, 2.8 million. So you can see that in terms of impact, that per pupil increase in the revenue limit drives a lot more revenue than does the enrollment increase. And then finally, option 4, just to kind of round it out, and I could go on option after option after option, but we just have 4 tonight. What about 75 per pupil increase in the revenue limit, 100 enrollment increase? Well, you can see that that is the best scenario. It takes it down a little bit to about 2.6 million expenditures exceeding revenue. Okay. So right now, these are just rough estimates. They're to kind of give us a feel for what might happen. We will certainly be fine-tuning this as we move forward and as we know more. So where is this likely to shake out? I would say probably closer to somewhere between option 1 and 2, around that area, than it would be for 3 and 4 based on what we know now. Couple of things that we're going to have to do, though, if we're going to be shooting for that 0 increase in all non-salary and benefit costs. One of those would be in the area of equipment. Equipment is very expensive. We know that it can consume a lot of budget dollars. So one of the things we're going to be looking at next year is additional equipment, only budget for if it's required to deliver new curriculum and no other options are available. All right. How about replacement equipment? Again, only if necessary to deliver the curriculum and the existing equipment is broken beyond repair and no other alternatives are available. We don't like to do this, but these are, shaping up to be tough times, and so this is what we're going to be looking at. And then the area of supplies and materials, we'll be looking to work with our staff to reduce those requests wherever possible, and to certainly be prepared to justify any increase. That pretty much is all we can say right now about the budget and projections, but there is another thing hanging out there that could have a material impact on this coming year's budget, and that is Fund 80, the Community Services Fund. We use Fund 80 to budget for programs that are more community-wide in nature. And right now out there we have about $2.5 million worth of net cost for the programs that you can see listed up here on the screen. We have some tech classes, we have some EC4T costs out there, partnership coordinators, crossing guards, police liaison, our middle school community recreation program. Related to that, our Special Olympics community recreation program, the safety patrol, our community relations budget, some post-employment benefits that go along with salaries for these various programs, and then our facility rental program. Right now, we believe that those programs are legitimate Fund 80 programs. We comply with the guidelines that are set at the state level. The problem is that the legislature, as you know, over the past several years, has had a concern over Fund 80, and that school districts are using Fund 80 to dodge revenue limits. Well, we don't think that that's happening here, but that is a concern at the state legislature. And so the story isn't written all the way here relative to what's going to happen with Fund 80 guidelines. We're still waiting on more information to come from the state. If those guidelines change, then we may have to pull out of Fund 80 back into Fund 10 some of the things that are there, but we don't know for sure yet. Another thing with Fund 80, and then this will be the last slide here for my comments tonight on budget, is that part of the legislature's concern with Fund 80 resulted in a levy freeze in Fund 80 for the last 2 years. Well, what that did is it caused the fund balance in Fund 80 to be consumed on an annual basis because revenue was not allowed to keep up with expenditures. And so right now, as it stands at the end of last year, as of last June 30th, there's $177,000 worth of fund balance in Fund 80. And you can see at the rate it's been used over the last 3 years, that's not enough to sustain another another hit. So that is also going to be a consideration that has to be weighed in on the 15-16 budget. So with that, before I go to the budget calendar, are there any questions or comments that the board would have?
Commissioner Amapola.
Dan, I always ask you this question, and you know what I'm going to ask you. Are we sustainable under this kind of budgeting from the state?
No.
And I think that's powerful
Just for the
that he
public
says
record.
that. Yeah. My question then is the referendum piece. We go to referendum, it's higher property taxes. So in one sense, you lower property taxes, but in order for us to sustain our schools, we go out and ask. So we're doing the ask instead of the legislature.
That's how the system has been designed since 1993.
Right. I just needed to say it out loud.
Thank you. Other questions for Dan here? Okay. All right. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, let's then take a quick look at the budget calendar. Okay, just a little bit of history built into it. Last October 6th, you approved a budget. The 15th of October, we got the necessary information to finalize it. On October 27th, you adopted the budget that we currently are working in. On November 17th, Charlie Kramer gave you an updated capital improvement plan for next year and the projects that he has in mind for next year's budget. And December 12th, the DLT considered this information and helped fine-tune it for tonight's presentation. We gave the Budget Development Committee a shot at this, a look at it last week on the 14th, and here we are tonight on the 19th. So where do we go from here? Well, January 1st through the 31st, the leadership team is going to be looking at budget strategies and updating our budget instructions. The period January 15th through June 30th, the leadership team will be working with the Budget Development Committee on the 2015-16 budget. February 3rd, again, is that date that the governor releases his budget request. The 8th through March 13th, I'll be meeting with every cost center administrator and the key staff. And what we do there is we review the status of this year's budget, how are things going, or we've got any tight spots, or what are resources looking like. We'll take a look at budget instructions and some changes there, and then we're going to be looking at just the system and how information moves through it, and some changes in the forms and things like that. I always enjoy those meetings. It's a time for me to get out of this building and get out into the buildings, and those are really useful. February 2nd through February 13th, we're having student course registration. March 1st is the deadline for administrator retirement requests. We get into staffing then. March 11th, March 13th, secondary staffing is projected to happen. We do some elementary staffing on March 18th, and April 1st is the deadline for certified retirement requests. 80% of our budget, a little less, is in salaries and benefits, and all of that information needs to, from staffing, needs to come into the HR office to Debbie Gillis, who then is responsible for pulling together the position budgeting piece. And she needs to have that ready by May 22nd so that we can roll that in to all of the other budget requests along with the other budget requests that are coming in, so that we have then a picture of what it's looking like. To kind of backtrack a little bit, March 16th through April 30th, that's the time that our staff will be putting budgets together and getting those in so that really by the end of June, all of the requests will be in, and then we can spend from July 1 through September 9th finalizing that budget, working out solutions, preparing information for board action then on the 15-16 budget. And then similar to the past, October 3rd, we would hope to bring a budget forward for board approval. We'll have to wait until mid-October for additional DPI information, and then we would target October 24th for the public hearing and the board adoption of the 15-16 budget. So that's just a look at some of the highlights of a budget calendar. And I would ask if you have any questions or concerns.
Okay, great. I don't see any questions. That's a lot to do.
Okay.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you have one?
No, I don't have any questions. I just have concerns.
Okay. Before I, yeah, right. as do I. Thank you, Dan. That's excellent. Are there any public comments on this report? No. Okay. Good. Thank you. All right. We have two first readings of policies we need to do tonight, and unfortunately, one of them is quite long, which will make us go over a little bit longer than we would like to tonight. But it is a totally new policy, so we do need to read that. The policy is 424. Guess what? On open enrollment, it's basically a putting statute in our policy, if I understand it right. So I think we should divide it up in sections to do that. First, any questions about the policy or?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Commissioner Johnson.
Wondering why this particular policy has to be all in policy when it appears to be a lot of rules and procedure that would normally be in the administrative rules.
You want to answer that?
Well, I'll answer that.
I don't know.
Typically, the Policy and Governance Committee works from templates that we get from WASB. And in all of the templates that we saw, they all have this level of detail. And I think we did kind of take an initial stab at condensing it, but it was, it became, the policy then didn't contain what the state says it should contain. So that's why you have the length of the policy.
Does state statute say this has to be in policy? Does it say that?
This was DPI's guideline.
You had another? Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then in other policies, we generally say the superintendent or designee or administration in general instead of identifying a particular individual office, I guess. So I'm wondering if that doesn't create the flexibility for kind of unknown job shifting in the future.
Well, we could certainly, amend that, based on your reading or your suggestions about the policy to the superintendent's designee.
Well, if you can anticipate a scenario where that might be somebody else, you wouldn't have to bring the policy back to reassign that specific duty in the future. But I guess defer to your recommendation.
I think that's a good recommendation.
And then under space availability and waiting lists, it says what the administrator shall consider, but then the board would establish the limitations. So I guess if it's clear to how it's going to be implemented, I don't want to second guess that, but just reading it for the first time, obviously, it just seemed it wasn't clear on whose responsibility were whose.
Do you have a suggestion?
I guess if nothing else, if the administrator is considering all of these things, and then what? And then they make a recommendation for the board's consideration in January, or those are the things that the board should also consider, or I guess it just seems unclear on who's making what decisions.
And we did not discuss that in policy and governance. We took the language from the proposed policy, so we could take that back and look at it again.
Anything else? Anyone knows? Commissioner Hambuck-Boyle.
If I remember right, maybe if we take it back, we can establish some rules with a timeline, which would make it a little more clear. But we got this kind of, you know, it was pretty lengthy, so it's good to put all our eyes on it and bring it back.
Okay. So, yeah. Thank you, Commissioner
You're welcome.
Johnson.
You're welcome.
Delay it till April.
All right. Did anyone else notice any other things? I frankly didn't have time because I got back late last night from traveling, but anyone else notice anything else in there? Okay, so we'll send it back to committee to at least look at that portion, and maybe there's some others with a similar wondering who's responsible for what. I would also comment that that paragraph starts with Executive Director of Administration, so maybe they all be changed to Superintendent Designee, wherever it says that. Commissioner Hambuck-Boyle.
I just want to say, you know, when we sit and look at many policies, and there's a list that we're working on, the process is to bring it back, to put more eyes on it. So, I mean, this is a perfect way of how it's supposed to go.
Yep, agreed. Okay, so it looks like everyone agrees we'll go back to that with P&G, at least with that change, and look it over again. All right, thank you. Any public comments on that? No. Okay, good. Reading of Policy 460. This is on student scholarships and awards, and this is due to statutory changes on awards. And so, first of all, before we do a reading, any comments or questions about this one? And thank you very much, Secretary Iverson, putting that up to see what the changes were. Were these, Commissioner Hambuck-Boyle, were these from the last legislative session that these happened, or no?
This one, there's a time thing on that. We need to get it done. Yep.
Right. Yeah, and what's it, for statutory reasons, or?
Yeah, it's a new scholarship from the. Yeah.
Any questions or comments about it? Okay. Anyone volunteer to do the reading of this one, please? You want to read it? Okay.
I don't like silence. I'll read it.
Okay, go ahead.
Ready? Student scholarships and awards, 460. Students in the school district shall be informed annually of any available scholarships and awards. Literature concerning available scholarships and awards shall be posted in the school building and or available through the guidance counselor. Criteria for school district awards and scholarships shall be developed consistent with school district goals and objectives. The district will select nominees and alternates for the Wisconsin Academic Excellence Higher Education Scholarship and the Wisconsin Technical Excellence Higher Education Scholarship in accordance with established procedures for those awards. The school district shall not unlawfully discriminate in the acceptance and administration of awards, scholarships, or other aids, benefits, or services to students from private agencies, organizations, or persons on the basis of sex, race, national origin, ancestry, creed, color, pregnancy, marital or parental status, sexual orientation, or physical, mental, emotional, or learning disability. Discrimination complaints shall be processed in accordance with established procedures. Accordingly, any scholarship or award granted by, administered by, or advertised, promoted by the district shall be in compliance with the above stated policy of non-discrimination.
Great, thank you very much. So, assuming no objections, we'll bring this to the board next time under resolution. Okay, any public comments on that? I assume not. Okay, so now we have a Safety and Security Annual Report by Mr. Kramer.
Is going to highlight some of the work of the, especially the two committees who are assigned across the district, and some of the work that we've done this year along the safety line, both student safety and worker safety, and then of course the emergency work group is the other committee. So just to highlight both of the committees. On the left side, you see the Emergency Management Work Group. Our first charge was, of course, to look at the existing crisis plan, the orange binders that I'm sure everybody's familiar with. It's been in place in the district since the early 90s and was in need of an update. A good system for us. It worked for a lot of years, but it was a top-down system. And as we get into the briefing here, I'll explain a little bit more on where we're going with that. And that's that second bullet on the journey to the National Incident Management System, or the ICS, which is Incident Command System Model. Another area we worked in was on our secure entries. And as everybody knows, we went to locked doors on all of our buildings after the initial students got in over several years ago now, but we had never really developed a protocol for that, and we're in the process now of working through a draft protocol, not without some issues. Number one being those student times when students are coming and going, and parents are there, and grandparents, and all the things that go with that. And of course the pickup times. Those are the other time of day that is difficult for us. So that continues to be work in progress. We've done a fair amount of staff training this year, and we will continue to have training. Actually, the next in-service day, there's going to be team training at Northwoods on the incident command system. And then, of course, communication is key in any incident like this. Jim and his group have worked very diligently to identify all of the forms of communication that are out there. We're looking at ways, again, to not only communicate internally messages, but to put out messages to parents and anybody that's in the Skyward system as well. So a lot of different forms there, the goal being redundancy in all forms of communication. On the student and staff safety team work group, again, a cross-section, a good cross-section of people across the district. Workplace safety has been a priority, and especially our workers' comp, and I'll share a couple slides on that particular issue a little bit later here. Student safety, we do get reports of every accident. We look at those through our work order system and track trends there as well. Prevention is a big thing, and it relates again to workplace safety and workers' comp. If we can prevent or engineer out anything where we do see trends, that's a priority for us. Compliance primarily is along the lines where we're struggling the most is with our required drills in all of our schools. We've been working with the fire department on some of the cold weather things where they're saying we don't have to evacuate completely, but that continues to be an area for us where we struggle to get those required drills in with all the other things that are going on in school. And of course, looking at the whole big picture thing, creating that culture of safety was a thing that we thought we could work on as well. You'll start to see many different forms of communication here across the district, and just those little reminders that help us with our practices that will help us hopefully to work in a safer mode. So again, just to look at some of the staff safety incidents here and to talk a little bit about that. It's a look from 2011 and back at our actual history. You can see the third column over, the blue one, is last year's history. We've been on the upswing as far as workers' comp injuries, and you know, that's why we wanted to really spend some time on that. That contributes to what is called our insurance mod, and in the industry standard, if your mod is at 1, you're right at the industry standard. Anything below 1, of course, is better. Anything above means that you've got some work to do. Last year we were at a 1.404 for the year, and based on our experience, again, that rolling 3 years, we think we're going to be at around a 1, 2, 3 this year. So we've got some work to do there, and we've got, again, as you can see, a number of incidences that happened and drove those costs up in those years. Why that happened, again, that's been a subject that we've looked at almost monthly. You know, if we could determine what actually is causing those losses. If you look at the actual losses, and again, this is a little hard to see, but the first column there is lifting. There were 44 incidents of lifting last year. Miscellaneous falls, there were 11, which counted for $144,000. The big one, miscellaneous strains, 46 incidents. And the fourth column from the right, 4 reaching injuries, but it counted for a very large dollar amount, over $260,000. And the last column, we see this a lot in the buildings and grounds area. It's repetitive injuries from repetitive movements and doing a lot of the things over and over and over again. So again, as you look at each of those areas, the committee has, you know, been committed to looking at mitigation and you know, trying to engineer out some of those things so that you know, that we're not spending that big premium for workers' comp, and obviously if we're not spending the big premium for workers' comp, there's, you know, more money for other things within the district. So on the safety committee, that's a big area of focus for us, and will continue to be as we see it in the upcoming year. I want to shift thoughts I can for just a minute here and talk to you a little bit about the ICS system. That's the other committee, and why we do that. There's a number of things that drive that whole system. We recognize that no single person can do it all itself. Again, a big change from the old top-down system. A person can't think of everything. You won't last forever. And of course, span of control is different under that system where you're only dealing with at the maximum 3 to 5 people. So the system is based on feeding that information up through to the incident commander, and you know, there's a lot of things that are tied into that whole system where we're focusing our training efforts in an effort to bring staff on board with how the system works. Again, you'll see the limited span of control on that side. For every job that's assigned out under the incident command system, there are standard job assignments. Common terms are used throughout. In other words, if you're speaking in any form of communication, you don't speak in code or 10 codes like our law enforcement people do. You speak in the open. And of course, we've got a lot of qualified people here, so that's the beauty of that system, is that once you understand how it works, just about anybody can fit into the role of the incident commander or any of the other roles that are out there. And of course, communication is another big facet of the incident command system as well. So if you look, again, the wiring diagram of how it would work, obviously the first on the scene, the person that's there the first, if there is any kind of an incident, is going to lead and manage that system. And with our system, we recognize that there's people who would probably fall in underneath that, but in most cases, our incidents are relatively short-lived. They're not like city county health department or police and fire who use the same system where they have extenuating circumstances and incidents that may go on for quite a while. We look for people who can do things. In other words, our operations section. We look for people who can collect and analyze and plan. And we look for people who can get things, i.e. logistics. And obviously there's a need on the back end for clerical staff, reporting, and accounting. And these are things that fit the school district, you know, kind of exclusively versus the national incident command system that we follow. If you look at that, then you can see the parallels that are drawn there. On the incident commander level, at the incident, there is an incident commander where we have a similar person who leads and manages the situation. You have an operations section. You have planning and intelligence. You have logistics, and you have administration and finance. So while we're paralleling the system, our needs in a school district are usually a little different as far as that goes. But if we recognize the system and understand where people have to fit, that's where our education portion is coming this year, then anybody can fit into any of those places. And that's the beauty and the power of the system, where you're not relying on that single person to manage the incident. So in a nutshell, you know, that's what I wanted to talk to you about tonight. Obviously, give you a lot of information in just a few minutes here, but there's a lot of work to do yet as well with this system to get everybody on board and to start. You know, we're going to do some brief scenarios on the 29th so that people can get used to using this. I know it works. You know, I see the city and I see other forms of government here, even for snow plowing operations, you know, they follow this model. And that's our goal, really, is when we can get to following the ICS model for things like field trips and homecoming events, then we know that, you know, we've assimilated that system into, you know, our district and that it's working well. We'll still have information that's kept in the binder that'll always be there, but we feel that this here is a much better system. It aligns us with all the police and fire, and so that everybody again understands, how to deal with these incidents. So, that concludes my briefing, subject to your questions.
Commissioner Ample, go ahead.
Charlie, did this kind of coordinate through shared services and the fact that we did some combined training together and conversations with that group?
Yeah, that's been ongoing for quite a while. My initial contact was with City County Health. We still sit on those committees with them. They run, this system all the time. There's of course, a larger, what they call the Emergency Operations Center, if it gets to be a widespread incident. Where we look, is probably an incident commander, one other person, maybe two, somebody to talk to the media if there is an incident, and that's probably as big as we'll ever get unless there's, a community-wide disaster here. So we think it's important that we have those basics down. Even though law and fire and all those, in most incidents, will come and take over, we'll still continue to operate that system internally as we coordinate with them. And it's very important that, we get that information and share that with them.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions? All right, thank you, Charlie.
All right.
Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Any public comments on this presentation? Okay. All right, good. All right, we're on to our last topic under the committee, the school calendar. And while Kay Marks is getting things ready there, we saw this for the first time last meeting, and we decided to put it back on as a committee session. One is, I'm not sure we had a consensus on how to go with it yet. And also there was some additional input gathered from other parties, so we decided to put it on as a committee session this time, again, to talk about. So, are you ready? Hey,
I believe so. Is everybody who's part of our presentation front and center?
Okay.
They're only speaking a half an hour each, Rich. It's
Oh,
okay.
all right, all right, all right. Yeah, I knew I should add some tea this afternoon. Okay.
Okay, so to start with, I would like to thank the people who are lined up behind me here, as they have all graciously volunteered to be part of our second 2015-16 proposed calendar presentation to you. The majority of folks that you're going to hear from tonight are current members of the calendar committee. However, we do have two teachers with us, both Deb and Abby, who were not part of the calendar committee, but volunteered to speak on behalf of what they've been experiencing working with the instructional planning block, which is something that we've obviously incorporated into the calendar proposal. And so we thought that it would be advantageous for you to hear from them, because they've been living for at least a year in two different venues of what it is we're proposing for the whole district. And so they've graciously offered their time this evening to come and speak to you as part of our committee. So in addition to myself, you'll hear from 7 others who are going to share some information with you tonight. What you'll hear about is both the charge and the challenge that the calendar committee went through, some research and best practices for increasing student achievement, teacher contract time and the minutes of instruction, as well as hearing from the two staff members that we just spoke about, and then both Adam Keaton and Jeff Bovey, who are teachers on the calendar committee, are going to speak to you about what they see as the impact on the proposed calendar at both the middle school and the high school from a teacher perspective. And then finally, we'll have time for questions at the very end. So with that, we will start things off with Mr. Scootley.
Good evening, board members. I was asked to give you a little information about the charge of the committee and then also the challenge that we faced during our work. Unlike many meetings and committees, this was one where we would start at 8 in the morning and all of a sudden you'd look at the clock and it was 1:45 and it was like, well, if we're going to take lunch, let's do it quick. So the time really flew. And some days you felt like you progressed a long ways, and other days you felt like you kind of chased your tail and ended up back just understanding more of why things were in our current system. The charge of our committee was to provide time for research-based instructional strategies. We want to improve our students' achievement. We want to provide regular time for teams, departments, collaboration meetings to take place. Charge of our committee was to provide regular time for the professional development that is important to our work. And finally, to provide opportunities to build in the inclement weather days that Wisconsin weather often can give us. The two things that I think are worth mentioning that were not in the scope of our project were to add days to the teaching contract, and then also we were not tasked with investigating reversing the start and end times to the day. So a brief overview of our charge. As far as the challenges that we faced, these are kind of the main six as I just started to outline the number of things that came into our work and things that we spent quite a bit of time on. These were the main challenges that I came up with. First one on the list, different schedule needs for elementary, middle, and high school. We first had to learn that the DPI's requirement and hours for a school year change based on level. So how are we going to navigate 1,050 hours for elementary schools and then 1,137 for the upper grades? Another example is when we talked about parent-teacher conferences. Some levels felt like 12 hours was a great amount of time for that. Others thought less time was adequate. The second piece up there, care for children during non-school days. We looked at a lot of partner districts, close districts of ours, and some school districts have a calendar where one particular segment of their students goes to school on a particular day. But we were cognizant of how is our community going to care for the elementary school children based on a calendar that includes middle school and high school days of school at the same time. So tried to have a family focus with that. Number 3 says UWEC, but really partnerships within our community. We rely on UWEC and others to provide mentorship programs and Blue Gold Beginnings and after school care. So looking at the other calendars of the educational institutions in our community. Number 4 there was to establish a predictable start and end date to the year. James Martin spoke to that a couple weeks ago. But for staff who are starting a school program in the summer, for our Park and Rec and other community members, how can we provide some consistency at the end of the school year? The 5th one there, balance appropriate instructional time with PD throughout the year. We had a lot of conversations about the current workday professional development model and where in the calendar those would be most effective to be placed, and talked about the balance needed between time with our students and then when does our staff need professional development and instructional planning time to be able to do the best work possible with our kids. And then finally, we recognize the importance of professional development days, but we also are very cognizant on limiting teacher interruptions. Obviously, to have the teacher in the classroom is the spark where that all starts. We currently, it's always a balance of is the professional development and work that needs to be done outside the classroom as important as having the teacher there, the spark in front of our kids. So the charge of our committee and then also the challenges that we faced to start our presentation. Next up is Heather Grant.
Thanks, Tim. I'm Heather Grant. For those of you who don't know me, I'm principal at Manzo Elementary School, which says right up here. I've also had the opportunity to be on the calendar committee. What I'm going to talk about tonight, I emailed all board members about already after our last meeting, but I thought it would be really important for both the public and the audience to hear the research that we based our work on. But before that, I was just thinking about the last time I spoke at a board meeting, and the TV station was here, and I don't like being on TV, but I was really fortunate that night because after seeing myself on TV that night, I decided I needed to lose weight. And I lost a lot of weight. And so I'm kind of disappointed they're not here tonight because I thought maybe they could help me get back on track again after the new year. So I'm going to have to get maybe on live streaming, right? Someone can watch that later. But so check on me in about 6 months and see how I'm doing. So. Also, I love to speak about schools and my school and what we're doing. And I do that really well in small groups and in meetings, and I'm not so great about doing that in a venue like this, so I thought using some humor might help ease my nerves, if not yours. So we have a quote up here that I wanted to share with you, because a lot of our work, all of our work that we did on the calendar committee was about increasing student achievement. And we did a lot of study and research about that. And what we learned is that the most important thing that makes a difference is having a high quality teacher in front of our kids every single day. And we are so lucky in Eau Claire to have fabulous, amazing staff. And what this quote shows us is that when our kids are exposed to that high quality teacher, as compared to some other places that have low quality teaching, those kids make over a year's growth and gain over the kids who are in a lower quality teacher's classroom. And that's huge. So all of our work was based on how can we make sure the teachers in front of our kids are the highest quality teachers possible. And what we found was a couple things. First of all, other nations. Finland, Japan, Singapore, we looked at them because they have higher student achievement rates than we do in our nation. And what we found is they spend more time with their, less face-to-face time with students and more time with their staff having collaboration time and planning time. So we tried to figure out how do we build that into our calendar. We also looked at the more recent research. This is out of John Hattie's work called Visible Learning in 2009 that was really talking about the effects of staff collaborating together and having significant professional development time. That students who are in teachers' classrooms who have that high quality professional development time, high collaboration, have over 18 to 20% increase in their student achievement rates over teachers who don't have those same opportunities built into their calendar. So we felt like it's very important and incumbent on us in a calendar when we have this great opportunity to look at how we use our time differently to provide that for our staff. And then the other big piece of that was that research, and I know we have a couple of teachers here to talk about it tonight, about that instructional planning time, that we really need to provide that for teachers in chunks of time. And what we're doing now is trying to do that in all of our schools in different ways. But as Kim Kohler talked about tonight as a mom, we're doing that by pulling teachers out of the classroom. And so our students are having the benefit of teachers having that time, but also having the drawback of having a substitute in their classroom and not that one teacher that we want to have that connection with kids. So we just wanted you to know, we know there are some challenges that come with this calendar and there are some questions that we might have to work through, but we really did base this on not what's best for the adults, but what's best for students based on all the research. And next is James.
Good evening. My name is James Martin. I am a secondary technology coordinator and also as a representative of the Eau Claire Association of Educators, their elected labor relations chairperson. I really quickly want to review, well, first I want to thank Dr. Hardebeck and the board through the process of the last district update, the soliciting of feedback from your staff on this calendar. Really appreciate that opportunity I've gone out those listening sessions that Mark Goings referenced earlier, the opportunity to go out and say, hey, here's a way that you can provide feedback to the board or to the superintendent. There are processes here and we recommended that they use them. And I also had an opportunity to work with Kay to present to the Parent Advisory Council last Monday, and we gathered a lot of great feedback from that and had some good better understanding of what their desires are, and so I appreciate that process. I wanted to review a few tables, and I think you have seen all of these tables, but just from the big picture point of view, to make sure that you're just checking it against some key criteria of the contract days, the minutes of instruction, and then overall minutes of a student day versus a teacher day. So really quickly, there are some inserted tables in here, but in the end they don't look nearly as well and I can't quite guide you through as well. So I'm going to switch to the document camera to try and highlight some of that. And switch here, and all right, perfect.
We got a tech person to do
it.
That.
Worked.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't mean it always works though. Okay, one of the items from the big picture is what have you contracted with your teachers for to date. And this is a comparison of two tables looking at the, on the bottom, to start at the bottom, the 14-15 actual breakdown of contract days by level. And then the top is the proposed breakdown in this current version of the calendar. So the only thing that I want you to know that you have 189 contracted days, and the paid holidays haven't changed. The instructional days have been adjusted, and we talked about how instructional days and instructional minutes are now, that linkage is broken, and it's been freed up to be more creative in how we meet our students' needs. So the instructional days have adjusted from one year to the other. The work days have remained the same for teacher work days, preparation time or assessment time. And then the PI or the PD/PI days, as you can see, there's an adjustment between last year or this current year and this proposed year, going from 2 to 3 last year to the 9 for the next year. And bringing some real good structure to those PD and IP days of what will be happening during those days and putting them in strategic places throughout the calendar. And then the conference days, you can see that that's been tweaked a little bit at the elementary and middle school level, and that tweak comes from the current year. We're using some professional development time in those PD Wednesdays, where we have professional hours, and we ask our staff to stay a little bit later on Wednesdays in order to have some PD time and have some meetings that are necessary to keep the district successful. And we adjust some of that time during those weeks to shift and flow in order to make everything work out to still meet the needs of our parent-teacher conferences. But in this sense, we're getting almost 3 days of parent-teacher conferences now, and in this new model, it would be a very solid 3 days without asking our teachers to shift some of their PD time, or again, if you look very detailed at our at our calendar right now, you'll see many days where we've done a hybrid of PD time and conference time all in the same day. So if you're wondering about that, just to clarify what that is. The next, the contract is met, no concern there. The next table talks about, and again, I believe you have this, is the total number of instructional minutes. And if we just look at this, you can see that we currently have, this is our current year, over 69,000 instructional minutes, and then an adjustment for next year. And this is all based upon 0 inclement weather days, so it's an apples-to-apples comparison. And what I wanted to make sure that we talked about here was the number of minutes required by DPI. So just that as a board, you're assured that the number of minutes that we're recommending in the calendar currently exceeds what the DPI is setting as the benchmarks that we need to meet. And then those corresponding minutes turn into an X number of days or inclement weather time altogether.
James, are those partly because of the snow days built in?
Those are the days.
Snow days built in.
Yep, those are the inclement weather days. Yep, that are built in. Yep. So just so you have the big picture perspective that that's all there and it all meets muster. And the last thing then to talk about is a little bit about how some of these changes that you've heard about at the middle school and the high school level affect things. So at the elementary, there are no changes being suggested for actual day-to-day minutes. When you look at the start bell, the end bell, this is a typical elementary school, and what is important, there's a lot here, and just to help us all focus, so big picture again. Right now, outside of the student day, the elementary schools have 50 minutes before and after school from the bell start to the bell end. And they have then during the school day some daily prep time of 45 minutes. That is time that they have to both prep and collaborate, and it varies from school to school. Each site is a little bit different, and they figure out how to manage it best to meet the needs of their students and their population. So their total amount of time currently is 95 minutes if you really have a broad view of what that time is, but realistically, there's time in there where they're still supervising students. There's still time to get students down to lunch and back from lunch. So it's, we don't have the exact minutes because teachers do what they need to do to take care of their students. As we look across to the middle school piece, the adjustments are 43 minutes currently and going to 19. That's again how much time is outside of the student day and that the staff are in their contract time. And of course, we've already identified previous conversations. Your staff are dedicated and they put in the additional time. Middle school has a assigned duty of 47 minutes currently, And if we take this additional time that we're talking about and put it into the middle school schedule, it would potentially increase each student hour to 51 minutes. Now, how that, a little caveat, how that time is to be used, we've heard to extend the instructional hour and also to use it for targeted interventions. And it very well could be a mix of that. And those details haven't been worked out, but they're both ways that we could take this time to directly benefit students. Then they also have a daily prep, which is 47 minutes, and that would also, again, just to keep things simple, increase to 51 minutes. And you can see the adjustment in their time overall, even though there's more student contact time in order to account for the total number of time required by DPI, there's a slight reduction in sort of their time made available to them. And I'm going to talk about this assigned duty when we circle back at the end. I have some things down here to show you what those types of things are. The high school is similar to the middle school proposal, and that is that they're currently at 34 minutes outside of their contract or outside of student day, going to 20 if we increase the student day. They have currently typically a 52-minute duty time, would increase by 2 minutes per duty per hour if we again take a very simple way to look at how to extend the school day, and then 52 for a prep and 54 for the new prep. And so there's a new adjustment in their total time, really without student contact. Now those duties, there are some great things happening at our different schools during those times, and these are types of duties. This is not an all-inclusive list. Some duties are used for our traveling teachers to get from point A to point B. They need time to travel, so rather than being assigned a duty, this is what they need to get done. Pack up their classroom, roll it outside, and pack it up into their car, drive across, unpack it, bring back, set up class. Lifeguarding, that's part of watching out. We need to have a dedicated focus, set of eyes in our pools. Hallway supervision, actively monitoring during a period our hallways. In-school suspension, where they meet with students and help them work through their schoolwork. Team collaboration at the middle school. Here your core teachers meet together every day and collaborate. Again, they can also do obviously some prep work through that as they talk about meeting the needs of their students. Staffing our learning center at our high school or our study halls at our high schools also. Different ways that these duties are partially collaboration, partially an assigned student supervision, and from day to day, not always the same. So those are just the tables I wanted to review, so you had the big picture. Are we meeting what we need to meet? Are we addressing the requirements that we need to address as a school board? So with that, I'm going to switch it back over to this, and see how would you, I mean, I couldn't do better, I'm sorry. And next, Deb Erickson.
Hi, I am Debbie Erickson. I teach at Meadowview Elementary. This year I'm a 4th grade teacher. Next year I'll be returning back to 5th grade with my group I have this year. So, our current reality at Meadowview has been different this year, and just looking over all of those minutes, it just made me realize really how fortunate we've been to have that 4-hour block this year. Our daily schedule allows for 45 minutes of collaboration time that we put aside for grade level collaboration per week. And if you think about an elementary teacher and the multiple subjects that we're teaching, you really can't scratch the surface. So the 4-hour block that we implemented this year has really allowed us to go deeper into our students' learning. So right now we have 4 hours release with our grade level team members, or in the case of our 4th grade, we've oftentimes collaborated 4th and 5th grade together. And so we leave the classroom and a guest teacher is currently stepping in for those 4 hours. As a classroom teacher, it's hard to leave your children knowing that you are the most effective person in front of your students. But I can say that experiencing that 4-hour block with our teams and our students and the impact it's had on learning, that 4 hour stepping out of our classroom definitely has paid off. So our 4-hour collaboration allows us to look deeper at our students' learning, and during that time we've aligned assessments. We spent time this summer aligning our instruction and our assessments to the Common Core. And so during those 4 hours, we come back to our plan that we developed this summer. We're able to look at the assessments from our children. It allows us to really look at what children are meeting the targets, the children that aren't meeting the targets. We're also looking at the children that have gone beyond the targets. And that 4 hours has really allowed us the time to look at how do we differentiate for our learners. And if they've met the targets, where do we need to go with them next according to our instructional plans. But it also has really opened up our doors in the elementary classroom. Our mornings oftentimes, I should state that too, when we were looking at the minutes in an elementary classroom, the minutes outside of the day when the children are gone, our morning time is often set aside for collaboration too. So we might have a behavioral collaboration, we might have collaboration with our math coaches, our reading coaches. So our collaboration with our grade level teams has really been during our prep time. And when I look at the 4 hour blocks that we've been given, it really has taken away that sense of isolation, because we do juggle so many curriculums and so many different needs within our classrooms that we oftentimes don't get a chance to talk about our practices and get a chance to learn from each other, which really we're surrounded by experts. But we oftentimes didn't have the time to learn from each other. And this 4 hour block has really allowed us to do that. So in the proposed staff development, a couple things that we're excited about at Meadowview is, one, it allows us to really stay focused on our vision that all Hawks, that would be the Meadowview Hawks, will sort of success, because we really are able to focus in on every one of our learners and how we're going to make sure that every student is reaching their potential. It allows us to focus on that continuous improvement cycle. And most importantly is it allows your qualified teachers to be in the classroom 100% of the time. And I'm not going to go over these, but I did bring samples if you're interested in some of what we've been doing in our collaboration time. So I'll leave these off to the side. This first batch of notes, this is what we accomplished in a 45-minute collaboration. So this morning our team collaborated around our ELA standards, and so there's a review of our prior meeting and data, and then you can see on the preceding or on the next pages the data that we reviewed today. And if you look at that, you can see in 45 minutes there were a lot of pieces that were left undone. We were able to review our targets, we were able to look at the data. What we weren't able to dig into is the instructional practices and what we do next. And so 45 minutes doesn't cover that deeper reflection that we really need to continually improve not only our practice but our students' learning. And then we also have a copy for you of the alignment, some of the alignment that we've done with our ELA and science and social studies curriculum, integrating that with our Common Core standards. So I'll leave that behind if you're interested. Thank you.
We have one question for you. We have one question.
It's a little bit off topic, but I just have to ask: is that an intentional practice that you're looping with your students, or just a scheduling?
I chose to do it this year. There was a staffing need, but prior 8 or 9 years ago, we did have multi-age in our school, and so I was a multi-age teacher. So when the looping opportunity came up, I'm thrilled to be doing it again. So
lucky students with you.
Thank you.
My name's Abby Seveland. I teach 4th grade at Lakeshore Elementary, and what I would like to do tonight is just kind of provide a picture of what a typical day looks like for an elementary teacher from my perspective, just in terms of what goes into our planning. The purpose of that being to give you an idea of truly how valuable that 4-hour planning block really is in terms of kind of going subsurface with our data and our instructional planning. So monkey see, monkey do. I saw James come over here. Let's see. Document camera. There we go. I got it, I think. Let's see. There we go. A little different from the one in my classroom. So what I have, and I don't know if I can go, if I zoom in much more, I might lose some of this content, but I just picked a Monday. Our days look all the same, so this is just one snapshot of what a day in the week might look like and what's being planned for. Is that focused okay? Okay, thank you. So, for example, you know, I've got the different lessons throughout the day, shared reading lessons. During our ELA block, we're prepping maybe 5 or 6 different lessons. So I'm prepping for a shared reading. During that guided reading time, I might have 4 guided reading groups that I'm prepping to teach each day, along with a writing lesson during that ELA time. Math would be a prep. Target time is a time that I would be prepping for. Science, social studies, depending on the day and what's being taught. All this to show that there's not a lot of transition time in the day to be able to do some of that planning. We really depend on this MAPE time right here is when the kids are at their specials. It's about 45 minutes when taking into account the transitions, getting the kids to their specials, picking the kids up from specials. That really is kind of pared down to about 35 minutes of time with the team to collaborate. We're really just scraping the surface during that time. It's just the tip of the iceberg. We might be able to do some collaborative scoring during that time, maybe some aligning standards to different lessons and units that we're teaching. But when we think about data, there's so many layers to it. There's so many dimensions to our data. So the 4-hour planning block, what we have found, and at Lakeshore, as Tanya and Marty both spoke at the start of the meeting today, we've been fortunate enough to be implementing this 4-hour planning block for the last year we implemented it. We're continuing with it this year. During that time, what we have been able to do is really look at the data that we've collected in planning for our instruction and going beyond just the surface of it and starting to look at, for example, how are our subgroups performing? What can we be doing with these lessons based on these assessments to really close some achievement gaps, to meet the goals that we're setting for the kids, to really raise student achievement? And it's just been, I can't put a value on that 4-hour time and what it has done for, I know Tanya said this earlier, but just the cohesion of our teams, being on the same page as far as standards that are being taught, expectations that we have of the students. That's so huge when we're talking about trying to raise the achievement of our kids, making sure that we're on the same page with the rigor that we're expecting from students. And to be able to collaborate with a team, we know that effective educators don't work in isolation. So to be able to come together for a chunk of time that's longer than 35, maybe 40 minutes on a good day, and have 4 hours together to really get into a unit is just, like I said, it's invaluable. So I'm just going to switch back quickly here. I'll do it even faster this time.
Can I ask?
Commissioner, go ahead.
Abby, are you done?
Did you have a question?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay. You're a young teacher.
Yep.
Okay, so say that there's an identical job in this district to this district, and you'd be under an old calendar with 45 minutes a day or whatever, and this district had 4-hour PLC blocks to learn from each other, and you had a choice. What would your choice be?
As an educator, I hold myself to very high standards, and as a professional, I know what I have to give to students, and I know what I would hope to get from students. And I believe that as that educator, if I had the opportunity to function and teach under a system that allowed me to do my best with other experts in my field, I would certainly take that.
Thank you.
Yep. So the effects of the 4-hour instructional planning block, as I have seen them personally, and I can speak for myself and I can speak for my 4th grade team back at Lakeshore, the professional community that's been developed through these 4-hour blocks is just phenomenal. I'm actually new to the 4th grade team. I spent the last 5 years teaching 2nd grade. And even just in these few months, joining that team and that professional community, specifically through these collaborations, is just, it feels well-oiled already. And I know that's because of the conversations, a lot of times very courageous ones, that happen during these 4-hour blocks. We're really able to get into the best practices, the philosophies that support our teaching, what makes us effective. It's just huge for our community. Like I indicated before, just the meaningful use and reflection of data. I think it's one thing to look at our data and say this percentage of kids aren't making it, you know, but to actually be able to get down to it and why is this happening? What can we do because of it? And to learn from each other, that's meaningful and that's useful and that's reflective and that's what we need. That's what's happening during those 4 hours. And again, just the focus on effectiveness. Everything during these collaborations comes back to, are we being effective? If not, what needs to change? We're able to really get into the research uninterrupted. It's been fantastic. We have seen the difference in our students. Our data shows it at Lakeshore. I can't say enough. And then, like I said, just that clear and positive impact that it has had on the student learning. So I'm in huge support of this 4-hour planning block. I've functioned for 4 years outside of it, and by choice I wouldn't go back to that. So thank you.
All right, good evening. My name is Jeff Bovey. I teach 6th grade science at South, and before I start, I can say I like to talk in front of kids way more than adults, so I have to say. Currently, for our middle school structure, we have a PD Wednesday, and it's a 90-minute block once every Wednesday, and about once a month we have a scheduled plan to meet with our common curriculum group, for example, the rest of the 6th grade science teachers. Unfortunately, this year, because of all the new practices that we have to do for our teacher education, we haven't had time to meet with them. But when we did have time in past years for 90 minutes, we would go to a different school, and by the time we either traveled to North Star or to DeLong, or they came here to my school at South, we would really only have about 45 minutes to communicate, because time they traveled, caught up in what we're doing, haven't seen each other for a while, and then we would really dive into it, and next thing you know, it was 10 after 4, and it was time to go. So the time that we have right now is just not enough. I was fortunate to be part of for the planning for science. We started kind of a pilot for PLC, and we would do every 6 weeks, we would meet for a full day as a 6th grade science group, and we would be able to collaborate. It was the best thing that I've ever had a chance to do. We worked on our learning targets, we analyzed data, we created our assessments. I actually became a better teacher because of that. It was more of, when I first started the science, it was like, okay, what are we doing today, or what are we doing next month? And I'd talk to my friends, and they'd be like, okay, we need to do this and this and this, and I'd be like, okay, and that was really hard for me. But because of meeting once a month, every 6 weeks, it was a lot easier. It was a great transition. We became a really close-knit group. We're always emailing each other now, and we can say, where are you, what are we doing, hey, I got this, I got that. So this new calendar is one of the things that we're pushing for, is that, one, I won't be out of the classroom every 6 weeks. This gives me an opportunity to stay in the classroom but still meet with the group and get the quality structured time that we need. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Adam Keaton. I'm a science teacher of a North, and I serve as the department chair there as well. I've been serving on the calendar committee for the last couple of years and have a whole new perspective on building a district calendar, especially the size of the district that we belong to. So I definitely appreciate the time and applaud the efforts of all the calendar committee members, because it's been a very eye-opening process, and I've enjoyed and learned quite a bit from everyone. It's been really interesting, even tonight, listening to people speak on behalf of their building levels in terms of the impact that a calendar such as this would bring to student achievement and teaching and effectiveness, and this word that you hear in the background, that reflective practitioner piece, that I think is really powerful. I hear that in the time that teachers get to spend with each other during the school year, and something that at the high school level that is unique because of the, I guess it would be the complexities of a high school calendar and its high school master schedule. I teach 2 doors away and even 1 door away from people that teach the exact same subject matter as I do, and we don't have time during the day to collaborate because of our like I said, our complexities of our schedule. So having time that is dedicated throughout the calendar year, although 9 may sound like a lot to a high school teacher, would be ideal and very welcoming for that simple fact. We don't get the time during the school year to get all the heads together. Usually it's done by interest or motivation or willingness to step out of their classroom to make the sub-plans and do that work with others in the district or beyond the district. And I think we miss some voices when we do it that way. I think it's less impactful on student achievement unless we get everybody in our district doing and moving in the same direction. So just a couple of things that I wanted to speak to quickly, curriculum adoption, instruction, and then building initiatives. And curriculum adoption and instruction really obviously kind of go hand in hand, and I would add to the word curriculum standards. And I can speak to that directly as a science teacher. We're currently in a state of flux in terms of where we go at the high school and even the middle school level in terms of science instruction in our district. And a lot of, like the Common Core was to English, there's a lot of momentum at the national level for something known as the Next Generation Science Standards. The NGSS standards, which are being adopted at a fairly high pace nationwide, would change science instruction on its ear, would turn it over. The focus would be less on content and more on skills. And anything, if you read anybody talking about careers in STEM and job futures out there in terms of what's available, a lot of STEM jobs aren't being filled right now because we don't have the certified skill set graduates required to do that labor, to do that work. So with with an adoption of something like that, not to say the district is going to go to that or not, but with an implementation of something as massive as the Next Gen Science Standards, we would need substantial time to learn as educators, to learn how to then teach in a way that reflects teaching kids skills as opposed to content, or at least changing a little bit of the emphasis around skills as well. Looking at some of the data that we are given now at the 9th grade and 10th grade level, I think that's going to be something that we really want to start looking at. So time during the school year to get all hands on deck to discuss things like the Next Generation Science Standards, ACT standards, 21st century type standards, and that curriculum and standards adoption process, I think is a very time intensive body of work. That, coupled with instruction, there are a lot of teachers, especially our folks that teach kind of our upper level or even our AP courses, they're very reluctant to get out of their classroom to do a lot of professional development and instructional planning, simply because their days are very numbered in terms of when they start in September to when the AP tests happen in the fairly early to, I would say almost early springtime. So there's some reluctance there in terms of leaving the classroom. That plus, like others have alluded to, previously, both as parents and as educators, it's tough when you bring substitute teachers into the classroom because you're missing out on that opportunity to teach your kids. And that's something that we all hold very dear. And as a new parent to the school district, that's something that I find to be very valuable too, just having those good teachers in the classroom. So there's a little bit of hesitation when it comes to coming out of the classroom during the school year. And then just finally, real briefly, building initiatives. We have some fantastic building initiatives coming our way at the secondary level, looking at things like literacy and looking at better strategies to teach our kids in terms of summative assessment taking. We all own literacy. We all own reading at all grade levels, but that doesn't mean I'm highly trained in how to deliver that instruction. Not to say I'm not eager to learn, and we have great resources in our building with our lit coaches and our English department. However, we just need the time. We need the time to have those conversations, to teach ourselves how to do that kind of work, and then in turn do that in a way that's effective for our students. So looking at the impact of this calendar kind of in sum at the high school level, we're all about getting time to get together and discuss our craft both vertically. So as primarily a freshman teacher, I seldomly get a chance to talk to the folks that teach sophomore biology and just be honest and say, so this is what I'm doing. Is this helping you as a sophomore biology teacher? And then in turn, as a sophomore biology teacher, is what you're doing helping our students that are taking chemistry as a junior or physics or what have you? We lack those vertical conversations that I think are really powerful so that we can get a really robust 6-12 program, and time professionally to do that during the year would be really impactful and really powerful. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, questions, comments? Thank you, everyone, for your reports. I appreciate it. Commissioner Hambuck-Boyle.
I'm just blown away. I could think about the committee getting together and allowed the creativity to do what they do best, to get their needs met, not just for families and kids, but to do what's best for families and kids is amazing. I almost think, boy, why did I retire? I would have been the preschool piece on that calendar committee. I just really think that there was a lot of information that we got from parents in different groups, and I'm thinking that information needs to go back to committee and let them look at that. I don't think the committee has not seen all that, so that they can reflect on that as part of the process and decide as a committee what they want to do with that information. I was blown away. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Commissioner Cummins.
Two things. One, I also heard from lots of people, and everybody I heard from I'm going to direct back to watch the video for tonight, because that was a phenomenal presentation, and hearing it directly from each of you and how it impacts your building and your goals. I tried to kind of cobble something together when parents were concerned over the last week or so. I'm embarrassed I even tried. This is what I will direct them to. I'm also thinking back to, Dan probably knows, when we had the big line items that we could cut back in 2006, and professional development, which was already so poorly funded, was just kind of X'd off. And that was an old model. That was a model of sending people out for conferences and things like that. But when I think of the initiatives since then that have been put on our staff and the rollouts of curriculum with less than adequate time given, when Mr. Keaton spoke about if we do hit NGSS, just the idea that we have this built-in time already, and I think of the other rollouts that have happened where I've heard from staff and leadership that we're just cramming it in. So I think it's very exciting.
I'll just give my comments here as a board member. Yeah, I agree totally about the 4-hour block time. I'm not an expert in it, but I have read Visible Learning, for example. Excellent meta-analysis of the research. And so I have no problem with all the professional development that was described. I think it's perfect that you're putting that in. But I think what's missed here is what the comments were last time was, one, lengthening, especially the high school day. I'd like to see the research that improves student outcomes and how that affects start times, which we have discussed doing perhaps in the future. And the second is lengthening the summer day by shortening the school year. I'd like to know the research on that, how that affects student outcomes. So if we can resolve that issue along with keeping the professional time that you need, I would be very pleased. That's really the conflict that I see. And the question about snow days, we had a question whether we really need 5 snow days, and I think that really is a big question, is in my head also. But to me, that's a tool to maybe a variable that may be adjusted to maybe reach a compromise on those couple of issues that I see. So that's kind of where I'm at, and it's that, again, lengthening the day at the high school especially. I kind of see why in middle school you might need to, but high school, the way I see a lot of high school students work, that's a question for me, as well as lengthening the day of the summer, the time of the summer by doing this. So that's kind of where I'm standing right now. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you for stating those 2 points. That's essentially mine. I feel frustrated, and I'm going to take ownership of that because I was clearly not articulate last time with my concerns, because for 45 minutes we heard things that I wholeheartedly support and believe in. I think planning is important. I think collaboration is important. I think you should absolutely do it. I think you should absolutely build it in. But my question was, how do we make up for 6 to 8 days of instruction that kids won't be in their seats anymore? And I didn't really hear anything about that. And what? I mean, that basically hits on the summer breaks. I think there's other research that says shortening the time the kids are out of school is good for them. And I agree that the parents want the kids out in June, but frankly, Parks and Rec will adjust to us. And I understand we can't start the kids before September, but if you need additional professional development days, some of those could be in August, some of those could be in June. We could get rid of spring break. We could get rid of the Fridays after to the conference days. The kids, you need more professional time, okay, but kids get 6 to 8 less days in school, and I have a problem with that, and I didn't hear the answer to that question. As a professional, I'm also required to do continuing legal education credits, 30 hours every 2 years. And I can tell you that in my first 2 reporting periods, I'm more than maxed out, and more than maxed out what I could carry over. I understand the importance of education, but I've chosen to take way more trainings because I think it makes me a better attorney. Not because, you know, I'm getting rewarded or that's the requirement or whatever, but by doing that, I either add to my work day, or I have less billable time, which means I get paid less. And so to say we need this PD, I get it. I support it. But to take all 6 to 8 days from the kids, instead of saying, you know what, we're not tied to 189 contact days, which is 3 holidays, which really means 186 work days. So add 1 or 2 to yours instead of taking 6 or 8 from the kids. So I didn't hear that. And my second concern was this times. I won't vote for a calendar that adds time to the days or changes the time that kids arrive and leave from school. I just won't do it because I know that means there's no intention to, again, for the 5th year in a row since this topic arose at the board level, that we're not going to adjust start times. So I won't vote for a calendar that changes the time that kids go to school until I see it wrapped up into a recommendation about start times. Maybe you come back and say the benefits aren't worth it, but I just don't believe you have any intention of doing it. If you're going to change bus routes and then next month you're going to change them again, yeah, you're just not going to. And I think 5 years is long enough to wait to do what's right for secondary kids, and that means letting them go to bed later and get up later because they're not awake first and second hour.
Thank you. Commissioner Hammock-Boyle.
I was going to say, as far as the presentation or to go back to committee, could the committee work on a plan to include the start, you know, the piece about start and end times? Because I think that is important.
We did, because that has been on our agenda. We did have next on their agenda, calendar committee, to look at start times, to start looking at the research, discuss it, find out what questions would need to be asked the board again on that they would need guidance on. So that is on the docket to be done. But I think it's a fair amount of work to do at the same time as this at once, because there's a fair amount of research, because there are a lot of options than just switching times, for example. So that is something we were hoping to start looking at soon. Yeah. Like right now, right? Other comments, questions, ideas? Commissioner Vu.
Well, I also want to commend the committee for speaking loud and clear about the need of time to help with planning and collaboration. I too is an instructor and I need that time. I believe the effectiveness of bringing students' achievement depends on the quality of the teaching. something what I'm about to say is different from what you're doing. It may not have to do with what you're doing, but it has to do with calendar. I questioned when and how, if we talked something about what Jonah and what President alluded to earlier, the recognition of Dr. Martin Luther King's Day. That has to do with calendar also. In my opinion, this holiday, which is a federal holiday, is an important part of our education. Jonah lead to the point that history is not being presented consistently. At Eau Claire School District, for example, we have 85% of people who are mostly look the same. You have 15% who are different. Our core value state, almost every single one of them talk about embracing diversity, taking bold responsibility, being honest. I think our students need to learn the truth about their history, and one way to do that is to do more of what the students are asking, is to consistently and intentionally teach the history that we all need to know. In addition to teaching, we may also want to question, have we ever considered adopting the observation of Martin Luther King's Day? We have 3 close holidays. Has a discussion came about observing this holiday also? And why not?
I did ask that question at the last committee report for this, and I'm trying to remember the exact response. I remember it was because it was close to the beginning of the semester, and there was something of conflict. I can't remember exactly what the response was. I'm looking at James. I don't know if he responded or who responded to the Commissioner Zhang.
I believe it was to the something similar to having the kids at school so we can teach them about MLK Day as well. But that's as far as I remember. On that.
Yes, that was absolutely one reason given. There was also a scheduling reason, if I remember right. But I can look it up.
Yeah, this is finals week. It's the last week of the semester, so that would throw off the timing of that.
I understand your concern because I had the same question. Why not honor that day also? But there is the counterpoint, I believe, is good. It's a good opportunity to teach in school about it if we do that. So, go ahead.
I do want to state my point again for loud and clear. Depends on who we are and our own personal experience. We develop that curriculum. That curriculum will have greater impact on our students' achievement. And we are in a world that is beginning to change in its color. I do hope that we considered stick to our values more openly and not just dictate by traditions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Cummins.
I think in some ways this falls under calendar, and I'm not discrediting the conversation, but I would hate for us to move forward and think that significant work was not done today in many of our classrooms by many of our educators. We might not have had a comprehensive approach, but I would really hate for us to move forward or to communicate to our public that in many areas, and if we need people to report better about or more accurately about what was going on, but I know there were some beautiful celebrations within classrooms across the district.
Okay, so here's where we're at. We definitely have to have a calendar done, by early March. I think that's the latest we've done it before. Okay, so we have a couple options. Here now, if we could give specific direction, we could tell the calendar committee, well, we'd like you to tweak in this direction, but we'd have to be somewhat specific about what we'd want. We could say now, no, we're just going to go to resolution next time and see if it passes in our resolution stage, or someone could make a motion then to send it back to calendar committee. That would, of course, set us back 2 weeks doing that. So I need, from the board, a sense of how you want to move forward with this. Those are basically our options right now. Commissioner Cummins.
I think that this is definitely a big step. It's not perfect. I think the calendar committee did a phenomenal job taking all the information and giving us a research-based calendar that fits the needs of our district. Doesn't fit all the needs. There's always going to be more work to be done, but I'm ready to see it move forward to resolution.
Okay. I know Commissioner Hammock-Boyle, you had suggested that there was some more data they hadn't looked at, that perhaps could happen. Go ahead.
Well, let's think about, I don't know what that timeline would be, but there's a lot of input that came in, lots of good input for the calendar and some other questions that we were made privy to since our last board meeting. So I'm just wondering if the committee that worked so hard on this could at least see that information prior to our next meeting, and then we can get their input. They might tweak things already, and then vote next time.
So you're suggesting they look at it, come back with a report, but we have it as a resolution at that point, not as a committee report? Because that's where we would vote on it.
That's kind of what I'm
as
thinking.
As an individual resolution. Okay. All right. Anyone else want to weigh on it? Commissioner Cummins.
So are we asking the committee to reconvene, or are we asking them to communicate electronically with each other?
However works for them, I think. I don't know.
I think we would need to have some administrative feedback on what that involves in terms of reconvening. And I'm not trying to, again, I think we need to be careful about our process. We've done a lot of asking of committees, and it's a great way for boards to work. It wasn't done well in the past. We're really trying to make sure we all stay on our side of the fence. But I think we need to be careful about just kind of assuming that then these committees will meet again and again. And we've got compensation coming up. We pulled a few numbers on some of the handbook committees. I think we just need to be careful. So I think just assuming that they will meet again before our next board meeting is a pretty big assumption.
Commissioner Zhang.
I went to the PAC meeting, and there was a lot of very good comments. I don't know if the calendar committee have seen that, but at the very least, I would like them to go over that information. Lots of good feedbacks. It was a lot of good professionals in there, teachers and family members.
Okay, so so the calendar committee has not gotten feedback directly from PAC in any way yet. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. The calendar committee has not gotten the feedback from the Your Voice comments or from the PAC. None of that information's been shared with the committee. So if you're looking for them just to receive the feedback so that it's kind of a final loop and they have that information, that could easily be done electronically to just say, here's the information for your review. If you're looking for the committee to review that information and do some kind of tweaks, as you've suggested, then I'd need to pull everybody back together and be able to meet to be able to prepare something for the next meeting. And that would need to happen quickly because obviously, you know, that needs to, the next board meeting happens quickly.
Right. I'm not sure the point of sending the committee a bunch of information pack or other without using it for anything. I'm not sure the point of that. So for me, I'd only want to do that if we had some guidance on what to do with it or where to go with it. If I personally was going to do it, I'd say, well, I'd like you to look at adjusting the length of high school days and the length of the school year. That's what mine would be. But if the rest of the board does not want that, then we will not do that. And I don't see the point of sending them the information and not using it. So
I'd like to echo that.
All right. So should we, Commissioner Cummins?
I just am unsure of our process right now. We're not on the committee, so to give specifics about the details that we want changed is not our work. If there are concerns and that goes into their work in the future, or if they reconvene, but they might take this and they might come back to us with a similar calendar, or a calendar that's been tweaked but not specifically to this board member or this board member's specifications, that is so far out of our role to give specifications on how we want to personally see the calendar, that I think it's a dangerous precedent.
Commissioner Johnson.
I think as a practical matter, if we, like you said, we have this exact same calendar in 2 weeks and it gets voted down, we're behind 2 weeks. And so there's clearly a lot of concerns. You know, it's not clear how the vote will turn out, and as it shouldn't be. There's a lot of questions about parent input and a lot of comments, positive and negative, for both parents and teachers that sure, the calendar committee, or frankly, if we had a link to the policy, administration shall recommend a calendar after input by staff. So if they choose to take all of this input from the board and the people who've weighed in on it back to the committee, they can, or the administration can sit down and tweak it and bring it back to us. But, you know, if the board is saying, you know, we've got a couple of people saying, here's my concerns, number of instructional days and changing start times, then, you know, they can take all that input and do what they want. I think it's up to administration to bring something back to vote on, either in 2 weeks or 4 weeks.
Okay, so the suggestion now is to take the input from board comments that we've heard, PAC committee, correct? We've also gotten some staff comments, correct, right? And send it back to the administration to decide whether to reconvene the calendar committee or tweak it on their own. That's what I heard. Is that accurate? That's what I heard. What does the board think of that suggestion? Commissioner Vu.
I was just going to move it.
Oh, okay. So we have a motion for that, all right. Well, we're in committee, but we can make motions in committee, but we often don't by culture. But Commissioner Cummings.
I don't think what Commissioner Johnson said is a recommendation. I think what she stated is what our process needs to be, which is administration brings us back another calendar. They've heard from the board, take this input, whether they meet, don't meet, however you do it. That's not simply a recommendation. That's the process we need to follow at this juncture. In terms of, I mean, it's getting the input and getting it back. It's not saying, well, this board member specifically
I didn't say
won't.
that. Yeah, I didn't say that. I don't think that we would. I don't think I said, when I repeated what she said, I don't think I said a recommendation. Yeah, no, okay, fine. Yes, Commissioner Hammock-Boyle.
I just, you know, I was going through my key works since that's our kind of our structure for the board, and when, you know, the calendar comes up as far as climate and culture, you know, I send it back to administration, but I know because our collaboration is based on trust and mutual respect in our district, I know that the committee will be included, and it'll be a good conversation, and they'll bring back something great.
Okay, so is there a consensus to send it to administration, perhaps calendar committee if they decide, to look at the comments, all of these that have been gathered? Is that a consensus here? We have one hanging motion on that. Commissioner Cummins?
There's still a motion to that move.
Yeah.
So as long as that's with the opportunity for resolution at the next meeting. That motion is still out there.
You mean, yeah, I think it...
Not another committee report.
Yeah, when we may need to, depending on the time frame when they get back to us. So I think it will depend on the time frame. Certainly, we have, 2 meetings in February? We would have to, preferably second meeting in February, but latest, I would say first meeting in March to have it done. So we may have to actually have the resolution, perhaps. So does that make sense? I think. So we do have a motion in committee for that, to do that. Do we have a second? I don't have a second.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Vu, a second from Commissioner Hammock-Boyle. I just have a question. Is this enough for you to go by? Do you need? I mean, you know, it's got all these comments. You know, how do you move forward? You know, I don't want you hanging.
If I'm understanding correctly, the motion currently is that administration would take all of the input to this point and decide whether or not that information goes back to the committee for any type of action, or if administration is just going to make a motion to come forward to the board with a recommendation to vote on the calendar.
Yes, I would say that's accurate. And by all the information would be not just board comments, but PAC comments and
Right,
so
PAC
forth.
and your voice.
That's how I understand it. Is that how everyone else understands it? Okay. All right, good.
Then I understand.
Good. I don't want you walking away not knowing.
Thank you.
But I really want to thank everyone's work. I mean, I've taught for a while, and I get it with the collaboration piece. I know what you're trying to do. It's great. So let's vote on this motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion is passed. Thank you very much, everyone. I know it's a hard issue. Public comments, excuse me. I should have public comments. Excuse me. It's on my list here still. I do put it on now. Any public comments? Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Lori Kepke. I live at 2704 East Ebleen Lane in Eau Claire. I've been on the calendar committee as well from the beginning. I want you to know that some of the frustration you feel, I think some of us have felt on the committee as far as the process and trusting the process, and I really appreciate that we can take this back and sift this through, and it may not come back looking any different, but I really feel being able to look at that input. We were not really able to discuss this in our buildings as the process was going on. That felt a little awkward at times. So being able to have that information that now really is, public, and people feel like they have been able to communicate that with you, I feel that would be really important for us as a committee to be able to look at that. One of the charges of the committee has been to look at the research and the later start times, and we spent 2 full, really, I think, important, hard days looking at that, and there will be a report from this committee as far as that research. And it just feels so counterintuitive to me for us to say, well, here's our calendar recommendation, when we didn't start out saying we need all this additional time, or we didn't know we needed to build in this amount of time for snow days. When we got to that point and the recommendation was, well, student transit needs to look at that, we had no feedback on that. When student transit presented that to the board 2 weeks ago, those of us who were on the calendar committee were like, oh, none of us had that information. Nobody was saying, let's start 15 minutes earlier in the middle school. So I really feel like having all that now, and that's all public, personally, I would love to go back and look at that and put all of these really intelligent minds back together and see if we can morph this into something that's a little more acceptable across the board. At one point, I was really trying to unvolunteer myself from this committee, but James Martin, in his infinite wisdom, along with Kay, convinced me it's good work and it's important work, and I'm somebody that likes to see an end result. I'm a school counselor. I'm that person that wants it to be good and look at all of the options. And I feel like if we can have a little bit of time to do that, I feel like as a committee, we will really be able to use that input to really feel like we're making a strong recommendation that feels right, and looking at all of those options that I think were on the table, but because of constraints from student transit or from administration, or we need more time for snow days, that felt constraining to me as a committee member. And I absolutely agree. I would be 100% not in favor of moving start times back 24 minutes because that's what student transit says we would need. That is not, I think, down the road where we were heading as far as giving you more information to what research says best practice is and brain research is to start times. So I was just toying with this and feeling, I wasn't part of the presentation, but I just feel like this is really important information, and I think we want to do it right, and we want to do it well, and do it to the best of our ability. And I think with all this feedback and parent feedback, I feel like we'd be tying our hands if we didn't use that. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate that, bringing it back. You don't know what that looks like, but I feel like at least we have an opportunity then to try and weigh all of this and to come to the best recommendation we feel we can. So thank you very much for giving us that opportunity back.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I think you said it much better than I did, so really much. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, thank you. So a request for future agenda items. I still have yours from last. We will discuss it next at the agenda setting. Any others? Agenda items? Okay. So if I could have a motion to adjourn. We have a motion from Commissioner Hambuck-Boyle. Do I have a second? A second from Commissioner Zong. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
This program was recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television. Chippewa Valley Community Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cbctv.org.